ultimately, we know that the committee looks at the Big Ten and the SEC in a way that they don't look at the Big 12, which is fine. Okay, let's not get in our feelings about that. There are several different data points, namely NFL draft picks, talent, past national championships, and plenty of head-to-head matchups in non-con that indicate the better football is played in the Big Ten and the SEC. I'm fine saying that out loud. I just think Tech is an outlier this year. I was on the sideline when they dismantled Utah in the fourth quarter after a 3+ quarter rock fight. And then, of course, all of us were watching last week to see if BYU would either shut the naysayers up or prove the naysayers wrong, or prove the naysayers right, which is what they did. The one thing they could not do is the one thing they did do and went to Lubbock and got their doors blown off. So I just think Tech is good. I think Tech is the Big 12 team that this conference has been waiting for a few years to actually carry the banner of the conference into the CFP. And they sit here at 6. You need to get into the top 4 to get a bye. And I think there's a case to be made that they're being a little bit undervalued by the committee. I think both BYU and Utah are about where they deserve to be. Now, of course, BYU at 12. They're going to see TCU coming up this weekend. And I talked about this with Sean during Crosstalk. If you're a Ute fan, the good news is, after really honestly needing to cheer for BYU to beat Texas Tech last week, you can now fly your Ute flag loud and proud, and you do not have to cheer for BYU anymore. If you're one that just cheers for BYU to lose every week, the good news is you can now do that. The bad news is, in the opinion of this talk show host, and it's only one man, I don't think BYU will lose the rest of the way. Now, the best chance for Ute fans to potentially see BYU go down to get yourself back in the mix for either Arlington in the Big 12 championship game or potentially getting into the CFP at large, and we'll get there in a moment, it might be this Saturday when TCU is in town to take on BYU down in Provo for a late kick. Now, late kicks at Lavelle Edwards, that is a tough place to play at night. BYU typically does very well because that student section and the stadium as a whole is very loud, and they do an excellent job with their in-game entertainment. Cosmo shooting fires, Polynesians wearing not much of anything. It is a wild scene with chocolate milk and donuts. BYU is a 4.5-point favorite as of now against Tech. Remember, Vegas builds in 3 for a home field advantage. What they're telling you is if BYU Texas Tech played on a neutral field, BYU TCU playing on a neutral field this weekend, Vegas believes it would essentially be a pick'em. It would be BYU favored by 1.5 points if you believe the 3 points built in for the home field advantage. The reason I bring it up is a lot of people are pointing to the BYU-Cincinnati game. Now, the good news from a Ute standpoint is you actually need both BYU and Cincinnati to lose. So, of course, here comes some brain surgery rocket science for you. When two teams play each other, one loses. There you go. So either BYU or Cincinnati is going to get that loss coming up next week. Now, I'm going to say the same thing about that game that I said when Cincinnati was here to play Utah. I think Cincinnati is a solid team this year, and against certain teams and certain matchups, I would like their chances. I don't like Cincinnati's chances against BYU. BYU plays a lot like Utah. They were built that way intentionally, as Kalani said on this radio show about 2 months ago. Cincinnati, bad matchup for Utah. Cincinnati, bad matchup as far as BYU goes. I think BYU is going to go to Cincinnati and roll. And then BYU closes with an unserious opponent. That's UCF at home. I mean, there's no chance there. The best chance, in my opinion, for BYU to pick up the loss, the Ute fans need them to pick up, is probably Saturday against TCU, even though it is at home. Because TCU is one of these sneaky teams that outside of Tech, Utah, and BYU, you can make an argument that TCU might be the 4th most dangerous team in this conference. Cincinnati is in that mix. I think Houston's a bit of a paper tiger, although they get credit for being 8-2 and 5-2 at home. Arizona State is without Sam Leavitt. Arizona feels a little bit the way TCU does, kind of like a team you look at, you're like, man, they could get you one weekend, but do you really trust their consistency? So from a Utah standpoint, ultimately, you do need BYU to lose. And I do think coming up this Saturday, that's probably your best chance for that to happen. Now, the other thing you simply need is to have what has happened over the past couple of games to continue to happen. Because I will say about Utah Saturday at Waco, in Waco at Baylor, I'm going to say the same thing that I said about BYU going to Lubbock. Okay, I think Utah does. It's not just about winning this football game. Now, if you listened to the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show last night, and if you listen to Coach speak across the landscape of college football, they will simply talk about just needing to go get a win. That's not good enough. And it won't be good enough against Kansas State, the final home game coming up in a couple of weeks. And honestly, it won't be good enough at Kansas, okay? And K-State and Kansas aren't horrible football teams, but they're both, underwhelming juxtaposed expectations this year. K-State 3-3, 4-5 overall. Kansas 3-4 in conference, 5-5 overall. These are 500 football teams. And the problem with what Utah has done by stubbing their toe twice, albeit against the two teams ranked higher than in conference, simple wins will no longer do. You have to go down to Baylor. You have to win and not just cover. You have to win and show some style points. You have to beat Kansas State here in Salt Lake and not just get a win, but you do have to stomp them and show some style points. Now, this is predicated on the desire to make it into the CFP, okay? If you just win out, 10-2, I will continue to remind everybody, including myself, like we don't want to be entitled college football fans around here. A 10-2 season is a remarkable accomplishment. Now, I know that there is a faction of this fan base that would rather have like 8-4 and a win against BYU or 9-3 and a win against BYU. But 10-2 and a loss to BYU, a BYU football team that is good, no matter what you want to say, is a remarkable season. You know, Dave Aranda, who was thought at some point to potentially be on the hot seat, is Baylor's 3-3 now and 5-4 overall. And this is the team that Utah is going to see coming up on Saturday. Dave, local ties, I've interviewed him a bunch of times. He is the nicest guy, and I cheer for him, and I want him to do well. And early on, it looked pretty good as they beat SMU, a team that's turned out to be really good. But, 3-3, 5-4 overall. They have to win their final three games for Dave to get to 8 wins, and I don't think they're going to do that. But I bring it up because I was listening to a Baylor podcast to get to know this team a little bit better. And the host, who is a Baylor alum and a Baylor fan, said, look, if Dave Aranda gets to 8 wins, his job is absolutely safe because 8 wins as the head coach of Baylor will keep you safe. That's kind of the standard that we want to look at for a Baylor football program that after the Art Briles stuff was basically left for dead. So I bring it up just to kind of remind everybody, including myself and Ute fans around there or around town, there are several P4 programs that would love just 8 wins consistently and advancing to a decent bowl game. Of course, everybody wants to win at a high level. Everybody wants to win championships and hang banners. But for all of the football programs around the country that would very much embrace an 8-win season and a decent bowl destination, if Utah is able to get to 10 wins, if they go 10-2 and they don't make the college football playoff, I know there will be tremendous disappointment in certain directions. And unfortunately, as a result of Utah's losses, it is not in their control. They do need help, and they do need potentially a college football playoff committee to view them in a way that isn't necessarily reflective of the team that they were a number of weeks ago when they lost to Tech, or by the time the dust settles, it'll be 5-6 weeks since they lost to BYU. But the losses are the losses. You can't do anything about it. You do need some subjective analysis to get you in to this 12-team field that's no longer in your control. But if they're 10-2 and don't get in, it doesn't mean the season is a failure. It would mean Coach Witt would potentially look at this as something, because I've always been of the belief that this is just the one box that Kyle hasn't checked, and he would like to get into this dance and see how he can hang with some of the best teams in the country. And honestly, I would love to see BYU, Utah, and Texas Tech, 3 teams in the Big 12 that I believe are elite football teams. I'd love to see them go up against these other teams in the field just to kind of see how they stack up, because that's the debate across the country. Big 12 apologists and Big 12 bloggers will say this conference is disrespected. Most people that really cover the sport and understand it nationally say, no, you're just not as good as the Big 10 and the SEC. It's why that 2009 Sugar Bowl win over Bama for the Utes, to me, is the best win in program history, because it was against Alabama down south. A lot of football left to be played, but a lot of things have to fall in place for Utah to get into the dance. We'll catch a break. We're going to unpack all this with CK coming up. Then it's Gordon Monson, Zach Harper, Aaron Falk. Busy Wednesday show, and it's good to have you with us right here on ESPN 700. I'm not the biggest Gordon Lightfoot fan, but Big Dave is. My dad loves himself some Gordon Lightfoot. The wreck of Edmund Fitzgerald. I think CK thought he was going to get me. Christopher Camrani, you can't stop me when it comes to Gordon Lightfoot, man. You simply adopted Gordon Lightfoot. I was raised in it.
But are you familiar with the tragedy of the SS Edmund Fitzgerald?
Okay, now this is where, loosely, but if we're going to get into detail, you're going to have to educate me. Was there a reason you landed on this for your bump today, though?
Well, it's the 50th anniversary of the sinking of the SS Edmund Fitzgerald in Lake Superior in 1975. It's considered to be one of America's biggest, most unfortunate maritime tragedies. And one of my favorite authors, John Bacon, who has written a bunch of really good college football books, has a new book coming out about the Edmund Fitzgerald and its significance in the Great Lakes and just what the travesty basically meant to the country back then. And this song essentially made sure that this awful occurrence stayed in the public consciousness. So history nerd that is myself, I would recommend checking out the book and schooling yourself on a very interesting, although heartbreaking piece of history that we have.
Yeah, I'd only heard of it. The details are something I will rely on you to fill in, so I certainly appreciate that. A little history lesson on a Wednesday. Chris, I always appreciate you making our listeners smarter and the host of this show, too. Gordon Lightfoot, though, overall, thumbs up, thumbs down?
A thumbs up.
Okay.
Absolutely thumbs up. Okay. Yeah. I mean, may he rest in peace. He played his role, and I'm glad, but I'm also not surprised that Big Dave bumps it. It fits the bill.
Yes. Yeah. Loves himself some Gordon Lightfoot. All right. It wasn't necessarily a tragedy in Lubbock. Huh? You see what I just did there as far as a ship sinking?
Not good.
But no, it wasn't good, Chris. And we had you live in studio last week to break this down, and we both just talked about the same dynamic. BYU had to avoid one thing. Now, it's easier said than done because I think Tech is really good. They might be the team that this conference has been waiting for a long time to go throw punches with the top teams in the country. But the one thing they had to avoid, they did not. They got smoked. Tell me your thoughts.
My thoughts are in two games against the Power Four schools in the state of Utah, Texas Tech conceded exactly 2 touchdowns to Utah and BYU, which is insane. They're good. They are gettable. I don't think they are a team that's going to blow anybody away once they get to the playoff, but their defense is exceptional. I think their offense still has some work to do. Baron Morton has been hampered quite a bit. They lost the backup, Will Hammond, who came in and torched Utah once upon a time to an ACL injury. That's all to say that they're the class of the conference. And now we find ourselves in choppier waters than we really expected last week, because I don't think either of us saw BYU going to Lubbock and laying an egg the way they did, at least offensively. I will say, BYU's defense played really well. I thought, they gave up a couple big chunk plays, but considering that they were their backs were put against the wall from the get, to only concede, what was it, 2 touchdowns?
2 touchdowns, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty damn good. So BYU's defense held its own. The offense just could not do anything. David Bailey, if we're talking about the best portal additions in the country, man, I would be hard-pressed to find one that's really more impactful this season than David Bailey. I mean, this is a guy who, if he continues to play this way at this level, you could potentially see a defensive end / linebacker in the Heisman Trophy conversation come a few weeks.
Yeah, if you're Cody Campbell or whoever, I don't know, maybe it's the CEO of Chip or Crumble, whoever's bankrolling BYU, you should send a check to Troy Taylor, because without Troy Taylor getting fired, Bear Bachmeier's probably not available, and neither is David Bailey. Like, both these teams actually benefited greatly from the mass exodus at Stanford.
Yeah, I mean, David Bailey was going to be able to get a hefty payout wherever he went. I knew he was a good player. I think going back to the spring, our guy Stu Mandel was like, this guy is going to be one of the most sought after players in the country if he goes into the portal, as everybody expected. And, Cody Campbell not only invested wisely in David Bailey, but basically the entire defensive line are guys that they went out and they knew in order to compete and beat teams like Utah and BYU, they had to basically win the line of scrimmage. And that's what they've done every single game. It is a backwards Texas Tech team. Like, we grew up watching Mike Leach teams with Graham Harrell and Michael Crabtree, and, the list goes on, putting up 55 points and winning games 55-52 or 48-45. This is not your, childhood high school version of the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They play entirely different brand of football. But yes, everybody in the Big 12, not everybody, two contenders benefited greatly from the very big cluster that took place at Stanford earlier on this season.
Yeah, and the other thing, and look, I actually kind of respect the fact that Chase Roberts took the podium and was like, we want to see him again, and this time we're going to beat him. Like, give me that attitude. If you're going to be the baddest dude in the venue, then believe that you are. I'm fine with that. But it led to this narrative that spilled over into some, propagandist media that works for BYU, and BYU fans claiming they left so much on the field. Like, Tech kicked 5 field goals, dude. Like that, the red zone offense, and I actually didn't know this until reading the game recap. Tech is the 98th. They're ranked 98th in the country in red zone offense. That caught me off guard. I didn't know that. So to your point, BYU's defense and, the stop at the end of the first half on 4th down right of the goal line, and Kalani went nuts. I actually thought, okay, they're going into the locker room feeling pretty good, but Bear didn't have any room. LJ wasn't healthy. You referenced Tech's front, who dominated Utah in the fourth quarter up here. They dominated BYU's online that isn't near as good as Utah's, so it just continues to be a lot of kudos to Texas Tech. And I thought, that game was a lot more about Tech than it was about BYU. But the dirty little secret is BYU maybe left a couple of things on the field. And if you're Tech, you're looking at that game because style points matter. If they were able to smoke BYU, 45-7, score some touchdowns instead of kick field goals, maybe they'd be 4 or 5 instead of 6 in the CFP rankings.
Yeah, that's a good point. This goes back to the common knowledge that eventually every true freshman quarterback will have a true freshman quarterback game. Bear Bachmeier struggled, as did the entire BYU offense. He just looked, like he knew that he had no time. He was pressing. But again, to your point, this was all the doing of Texas Tech's defense, their scheme. I do think a 22-point win at home over a previously undefeated team helps. Yes, it would have helped if it was a 32-point win, but you were also taking into account that they also have a 24-point road win over the team that the metrics, as you like to say, over the team that the metrics love, and that's the Utah Utes. So if you're going to take a plus 46 winning percentage against the second and third best teams in the conference, if you're Texas Tech, you'll take it. And I just don't think they're going to be challenged the rest of the way. And considering the fact that we will likely see other massive changes due to the fact that a lot of these teams play each other and everybody's due for an upset every once in a while late in the season, I would not be surprised to see Tech continue to climb.
Do you think there's any chance they get a first-round bye? As of now, they would be 6, and they would play Miami in the first round. Now, it's interesting what the committee told us last night. There's a chance the ACC actually is shut out entirely. That's a small chance. Now, we'll unpack that a little bit later as to why. I mean, there's a misnomer that if you win a P4 conference, you get in. No, you have to be one of the top 5 ranked teams. The G5 team's going to take one. And there's this weird pathway that Duke actually could have something to say about. Like if a 8-4 Duke wins the ACC, they might not get a team in. Their best chance is Miami at large. But two-part question, how do you think Tech would stack up against a team like Miami or a team that lives in that cul-de-sac, Texas at 10, Notre Dame at 9? And do you think there's any pathway? Because to your point, they're not going to lose again, but they don't really have an opportunity to impress up until the Big 12 championship game. Their final 2 games of the season are UCF and West Virginia. Do you think they can get up into the top 4 and maybe get a first-round bye?
I think a lot of it depends on what happens with A&M and Alabama. Alabama, obviously, with the one loss, we'll have to see how the SEC title game shakes out, who gets there. I think if Tech runs the table and wins its next 3 games by an average of 20 plus points, my guess is they will get to the number 4 spot. But it also depends on how those other teams fare themselves. We are we are existing in a realm where, as I mentioned last week on the show, subjectivity is going to run rampant, and that's just unfortunately. I know fans don't like it. It's just the nature of the beast. This is the system we've chosen. It's better than the BCS. It's better than 4 teams, but this is what we got. So if Texas Tech handles its business and hopes and prays that the big boys beat up on each other, and if you have close games that may or may not impress the committee, my guess is they will be able to sneak up to the top 4, but I don't think it's a guarantee.
No, I don't think it's a guarantee either, because you have to ultimately wonder how the committee views the Big 12 outside of Texas Tech. How impressed are they with Tech's win over Utah and Salt Lake City? Now, I still believe that's the best win in conference. I don't think there's a team in the Big 12 that has the type of win Tech has, beating Utah here in Salt Lake. And how much do they really value BYU, who falls 5 spots to 12 as we continue to follow and track these metrics that I talk about every single week, because these are metrics the committee has told us themselves they're using. So if we look at the up-to-date S&P Plus, right now, they still like Tech at 4. Utah's at 7. BYU falls to 22. And if we move over to the Football Power Index, I believe, Utah is actually still ranked ahead of Tech. Utah's at 9. Tech is at 11. BYU's at 17. So it does come down to how the committee view the wins over Utah and the wins over BYU as to whether or not that is impressive enough for them to jump over one of the top 4 teams to get a bye in the first round. But it brings us back to this scenario, CK, that we outlined yesterday. And I don't know if this is really what's going to unfold. Only time will tell. But now Utah creeps up to 13 and BYU falls down to 12. Okay. When you look at the projections and the percentages, which is all we can do when it comes to the way ESPN is ranking this stuff, they have Utah with a 36% chance to make it into the CFP. They have BYU with a 27% chance to make it in the CFP, and Texas Tech with an 89% chance to make it. Feels like Tech is kind of a lock. But what happens, because I think this is actually going to go down. I just don't know how the committee is going to view it. I don't see a loss on BYU's schedule. Coming up on Saturday against TCU, I think is really the only shot. If you're a Ute fan, you need BYU to lose one more game. Cincinnati, matchup against Utah, nightmare scenario for them. And as you and I both know, BYU is built very much like Utah, and that's intentional. I don't think Cincinnati matches up well with BYU. Even though it's on the road, I think BYU wins that game. Maybe they get got on Saturday against TCU, but they close with UCF. I see 3 wins for BYU, and I see 3 wins for Utah. Baylor, K-State, Kansas. Now, does that mean it's going to happen? No, but both teams will be favored in the final 3 games, and my guess is they both win. So what does the committee do? If BYU goes back to the Big 12 championship game and gets stomped again by Tech, and Utah wins their final 3 games and they smoke all 3 of them, is that enough to get Utah in to the college football playoff as an at-large?
So this is where we have to start scoreboard watching with the other teams. Correct. In these hypothetical scenarios. Correct. Does Miami finish off as the top-ranked ACC team and win the ACC? You mentioned that there's chaos scheduled to be rampant in the ACC, so that's kind of too hard to even project at the moment. Texas might be the team that could give Utah its best shot because of how difficult Texas's last 3 games are. You have to go to Georgia. I can't remember. They have another really difficult team on their schedule as well. Do they play A&M? I can't remember. But anyways, that is a team at 10 right now that I think you can circle and say, if Texas manages to drop a 3rd game, Utah might have one of its first dominoes fall into place. But the tricky part is right now, because of the way the rankings work, South Florida is your group of five highest ranked team, and they would, in theory, get in as the number 12. So, does the committee have the gall basically to potentially ditch a group of five team for the sake of a potential 2-loss team? Like, does South Florida continue to win its next few games, win the American Conference? And this is where it gets tough, man. Like, could you imagine like Utah or BYU being the team that could potentially keep out the quote unquote little guy who they used to be once upon a time? It would be very ironic and a little bit tragic, but that could potentially be on the table. I don't know if Utah gets in as an at-large if Texas Tech smokes BYU for a second time without a bunch of things going their way. Like, and by a bunch, I mean like we're talking like probably 4 or 5 results over the next few weeks. And let's not forget that there is some historical precedent with this before. And granted, it wasn't in the CFP realm, but Utah needed 4 results on the last weekend of the 2022 season to go their way for them to get to the Pac-12 title game in order to get back to their second straight Rose Bowl. It happened. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but the subjectivity and the metrics, as you like to say, make this so much more difficult and dicey. But first and foremost, Utah has to win these games, and I think they're favored, but I don't think, like, let's just say I wouldn't be stunned if Utah struggles in any of these final 3 games.
So to your point, and I'm pulling up the line here because Texas coming up between the hedges, Georgia, and they are a 6-point dog coming up this weekend. So there's a good chance Texas goes to Georgia and loses. Then they're home against Arkansas, and their final game is home against A&M, who's the 3rd-ranked team in the country.
That's right. It is A&M, yep.
So for for Oklahoma, who is right ahead of both Brigham Young and Utah as well, they're at Bama. They're in Tuscaloosa this weekend. Then they get Mizzou at home and LSU at home. Now, of course, LSU is in chaos. Mizzou does not have their starting quarterback. But Georgia heads down to Alabama coming up this weekend. Oklahoma goes down to Bama coming up this weekend, where they're a healthy underdog, as I'm pulling up the line once again as my computer refreshes. They are a 6-point underdog to Alabama. So it looks there's a good chance that both Oklahoma and Texas got coming up this weekend. That would be good for both Utah and BYU. Then there's the Notre Dame dynamic. Their 2 losses at Miami and then home against A&M, also their first 2 games of the season. So what the committee is also telling us is they're trying to figure out who you are right now, not who you were 2 months ago, or not even who you were 4 or 5 weeks ago, which does benefit Utah, because by the time the final iteration of the CFP rankings will be released, it will be about 5-6 weeks since they lost to BYU. Notre Dame is at Pitt this weekend. College game day is there. But then 2 cakewalks to end the year. They're home against Syracuse, which is a pathetic athletic department and a horrible journalism school. And then they're at Stanford as their final game of the season. So you do need all 3 of those teams potentially to lose one more time in order to gain access. But let's move over here because I talked about this earlier today. If Utah finishes 10-2 and they don't make it into the CFP, this season, in your opinion, is what?
If they finish 10-2 and don't make the CFP, and their only 2 losses are to Texas Tech and BYU, considering the amount of offensive turnover and roster turnover they had, that's an exceptional season.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if Utah fans want to hear that, but unfortunately, that would be, in my opinion, the mark of a very good season. A season in which the last few years, in the wake of all the Cam Rising injuries, they realized that they had to basically change their methodology, the type of offense they wanted to run. They knew they needed to go into the portal and get a good quarterback. They've done those things. Listen, stuff happens. If you don't win, if you don't beat the best teams on your schedule, you're not going to end up in the college football playoff. So that might sound a little reductive, as you like to say on the drive, but 10-2 is absolutely a success. I just think for Utah fans, the painful part would be that I think you can make an argument that this is as wide open of a college football playoff as we've ever had, even more so than last year. So, that would be salt in the wound, but that would just be the reality of it.
Do you think Josh Furlong from KSL, who probably will join us at some point this week, sat down with Whit and his son to talk about the potential of this being it for Kyle? And we pontificated on what dynamics led to him deciding to come back last year. And until he said it out loud, which he did a couple of times, he did it on Sean's show, and then at Big 12 Media Days really doubled down. Like, he did not want to go out the way he went out last year. Is 10-2, non-Big 12 championship, non-CFP berth enough for him to say, okay, I'm leaving this cupboard full for Morgan?
I think so. Yeah, I just you can't chase the sunset forever. Eventually, the sun is going to go down beyond the horizon. And looking at, I mean, does Kyle want to come back to face the Arkansas Razorbacks next year as a non-conference schedule game? Like, that's cool that an SEC team is coming here, but Arkansas is maybe one of the worst teams in the SEC. Does that move the needle for him? Does he want to snap the quote-unquote losing streak to BYU now that they've won 3 games in a row? They have them at Rice Eccles next year. I just think if you can get to 10-2, if you can get to a decent bowl game, play a decent team, I just think, this is just my opinion, like, you are going to leave the program in good. I mean, he would have left it in good shape, I think, no matter what. But the fact that they will have an offensive coordinator in place that both he and Morgan interviewed and hired together, the fact that they would have a quarterback for the present in Devin Dampier and then a potential quarterback of the future with Bird Ficklin, that obviously matters maybe more so than any other piece of position on the roster. So that's my take. I just considering how volatile things get from season to season, you don't know how injury woes can hit you. I mean, Utah's been beset with insane poor injury luck the last few years. This year they've been all right. I mean, they've lost a couple guys, but I'm trying to think, like, who is the most notable season-ending injury. It's the H-back kid from American Fork, Andrews, and anybody like in seasons past, it was like, oh, you lost Cam, you lost this guy or this guy. I mean, they've been all right this year, and they've looked like the Utah team that people are used to seeing, but they're still in the mix. And really, as a fan, that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, especially mid-November. I've said it 10 times this week. I'll continue to say it. If you're a college football fan and you're nearly to Thanksgiving with something to hope for, then you should be grateful, Chris. I'll just put it there since we're approaching Thanksgiving. Last thing, I don't think I've talked to you since it's official that my guy Pops and your guy Kurt both have signed multi-year extensions to come back to continue this RSL roster construction. The natives don't appear to be very excited about either of these scenarios. But now Jason's calling the shots. So Kurt is brought back, but he's no longer the decision maker. This buck stops with Jason. So were you surprised to see both Pablo and Kurt Schmidt re-sign for a multi-year extension to continue this RSL project?
Not even in the slightest. I mean, I think the writing was on the wall, whether they wanted to admit it or not, that when Jason came back, this was always going to be an opportunity for him to run a different side of the operation. And as he said in his press conference and on your show, their priority must be now to build out their technical office and their front office and their scouting department, because you can't miss at the level that they've missed in the last 3 or 4 transfer windows and expect to matter not only nationally, but locally. I mean, like, RSL is, should understand where it is in the local, pecking order when it comes to sports in Utah. But right now, it's there for you. Like, the Jazz are going to be not great for a very long time, and Utah and BYU football play for 4.5 months out of the year. The MLS schedule goes for 11 damn months. So you can figure out a way to endear yourself to a fan base that could probably be willing to come back and turn it into, as you like to say it once upon a time, the Fortress, I believe, or the Riot.
The Riot. It's still the Riot.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, and in order to do that, you have to have players that are worth, paying to watch. And outside of Diego Luna the other homegrown. Well, Diego's on a homegrown. He was signed from El Paso. Xavier Gozo, an actual homegrown player from Utah. They got a lot of work to do, man. I mean, they have the bones, but you have to be able to go out and find difference makers, and you got to get somebody who's willing to be like, oh, Nate Bench is going to get stoked about this signing. And I just don't know if we're there yet.
Gordon is in studio coming up in a bit. We'll have
you got to ask him about Nate Bench.
I'm going to ask him about Nate Bench. Final thing, where do you do your grocery shopping?
So I'm a little bit of a socialist when it comes to grocery shopping. I bounce around. Okay. I'll hit up the new Trader Joe's on 7th East because of its proximity and just the size. It's nothing like the downtown one that was suffocating. I'll hit Harmon's and Brickyard for some things. I'll hit Smith's on 21st. I'll even go to Target sometimes up here in Sugar House as well. But I try to spread the wealth. I don't know about you. What are you doing?
I'm about 80% Harmon's at this point, 20% Whole Foods. But here's my question. I'll stop by TJ's. That's what I call it. No big deal occasionally. But if you pull in the parking lot and a bro makes you wait while he backs in his truck to a parking spot, what's your opinion on that bro?
Listen, man, we live in the state of Utah. We are filled to the gills of angry bros driving trucks. I think it depends on one, if there's a tint on the truck, because if there's a tint, odds are he's having a bad day more often than not. Depends on how many stickers he's got on the back of his truck, because odds are the more stickers, the worse day he's having. But if you have a camera / if you're somebody who can get to your spot when you're backing up at a decent pace, I'm not going to make anybody feel too bad about it, because I've been known to back into a spot or time or two every once in a while, Spence. So
no, but
I'm not a truck bro.
I'm not anti-back into a parking spot. I'm anti-back into a parking spot when somebody's waiting for you. That's when you just pull into the parking spot. That's my take.
Well, if I'm going to play devil's advocate here, it's hard to park a truck, especially in a city parking lot. I will send you a very funny meme that would not translate well over radio waves. But let's just say it's hard to park trucks in cities. Let's just say that.
Okay, we can leave it there. Chris, thanks for the time, buddy. Be good.
Appreciate you.
Why are you chomping at the bit to get in on this debate? My take is simply this. You're fine to back into a parking spot.
Right.
But don't make others wait while you're backing into your spot. It's annoying.
It's mostly fair. Like, first time partner.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Okay.
The other thing is, just practically speaking, if you got a big truck with a long bed, if you just pull in, sometimes you're like hanging out into the parking lot ways. So there's some practicality there. Just your truck guy input.
So you're pro backing into a spot even while people are waiting for you to complete the endeavor.
No, do so efficiently.
Okay.
If you're taking your time to park, or you're just like, I have another grievance while we're here.
Okay.
Delivery drivers who think that they don't have to follow like freight laws anymore, or like
Amazon buses,
Uber, like pickup drivers that aren't with the company. They're just like the gig guys. Thank you for the deliveries. I'm not speaking down in that regard, but you can't just turn your hazards on and park in the middle of State Street. It's getting worse.
I'm with you there. I bet Monson has a take on this. Gordon Monson, live in studio, coming up on the other side. We also have Zach Harper joining us today. Aaron Falk stops by. I do want to tell you about my friends at Game Day Men's Health. So here's the deal. A couple of years ago, I just set a goal. I'm like, I want to get into the best shape I've ever been in as an adult. So if you're aging into your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and if you've tried to get back into shape, you know that it's just difficult. It's harder than it used to be when you were in your 20s. So after about 3 months of intense exercise, dieting, eating cleanly, I was disappointed in what I thought to be a lack of results. So I had a friend ask me if I had ever tried to supplement testosterone, which I'd never had. He recommended Game Day Men's Health. I went in for a consultation, which they're giving you for free as a listener of this show. That's just a little bit of blood work. Then they're going to go over your levels, and they're going to recommend some products that could help you get back in shape, lose belly fat, get your libido back up to where it needs to be. And I utilized their testosterone therapy and then some peptides they use as well. And within 3 months after that, I had been in, and still am, by the way, the best shape I've been in my adult life. So it's easy for you guys to do. It's very affordable with the deal they're giving you. They've got locations in Lehigh, Pleasant Grove, Cottonwood Heights, and South Ogden. So it's a free consultation, but as a result of them being a client on the show, you get 50% off your first year membership. So it makes it very affordable. Go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com, GameDayMen'sHealth.com, schedule your consultation. Tell them you heard me talking about it. You'll get 50% off your first year membership at Game Day Men's Health. Gordon Monson, live in studio, coming up on ESPN 700. We can't do Gordon Lightfoot all show. I just have to make a request that this is the final Gordon Lightfoot song that we play.
Oh, the last one.
Just for today, I mean, look, I was force-fed Gordon Lightfoot as a child. My father loves Gordon Lightfoot. Of course, Chris Camerati joined us last segment and requested a Gordon Lightfoot song. We do have another Gordon in studio. Gordon Monson, let's see. I feel like you like Gordon Lightfoot. I feel like you're pro Gordon Lightfoot.
A couple of them.
Okay.
I mean, this song, although now that you listen to it after all these years, it is a little schmaltzy, isn't it? But the Edmund Fitzgerald, that whatever the official title is, that's a hell of a song. I mean,
we played that last segment.
Yeah.
Camerati wanted it.
So I'm not a huge Gordon Lightfoot guy, but a couple of those songs I think are pretty darn good.
Are you familiar with the tragedy that inspired that song?
The sinking of the Edmund
Indeed,
Fitzgerald?
yes.
Yes, I am.
50-year anniversary. I don't know if they call anniversary, but
well, yeah, man, that is. Oh man, I'll tell you, those Great Lakes, they can get angry. I mean, beyond even what the ocean does. Sometimes it's pretty amazing. Any other tidbits or facts you want to know? How you doing, bud? How you doing?
Duke, come on, man.
Dog loves me.
He does love you, Duke. Hey, if you want to hop on YouTube and watch my dog hump Gordon, feel free. Hey, behave yourself. They're going to make me take you home. Yeah, that's right. Sid. He knows he's in trouble.
He's a good dog.
He is a good dog.
Anyway, point is, that was a big deal back when it happened.
Yeah.
And, I mean, anytime you're losing, 29 lives?
Was it 29?
Something like that.
I was not alive, so I'm going to trust you.
They ring the bell that many times.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, it's, Gordon Lightfoot. Okay, not great.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Big Dave loves him, so that's why I said, okay, that's enough. 29 crew members lost in the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which did inspire a great pop song. But anyway, Gordon, how are you, buddy? Good to see you.
Good. I mean, wait, just one more thing.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being on a ship like that out in the middle of the ocean? All of a sudden you got 25-foot waves. Is there a worse way to go? I mean, that's a bad way.
That would be pretty terrifying.
Yeah, especially in November, as he sang in the song, the winds are whipping.
It's cold up there this time of year.
Wow.
Have you ever found yourself in a perilous situation on a plane or a boat where you thought
I was going to,
like, this is it, I better get right with my maker, which would take you a long time, if we're honest?
No, the worst thing that ever happened to me on a boat was the engine falling off. And you remember that story?
I do remember that
my
story.
Johnson fell off.
Yeah, there we go. There we go.
Back in the water.
There
it was
it
a
is.
Johnson. And we couldn't find it. We dove for it, but we could never find it.
Your Johnson fell off the boat.
Yeah.
Now, let's be clear. That was the name of the engine.
Yes,
Okay.
of course.
Well,
What
I
else would
mean,
it be?
I just don't want our listeners to be confused. And after your Johnson fell off, you jumped in, but you could not find your
I
Johnson.
looked hard for it, but couldn't find it.
So the Johnson, still to this day, is at the bottom of the lake.
It's gone.
It's gone?
It's all rusted over.
All right. Yeah, old school big show back in the day. Can we get any of that audio? Is there any way we can get any of that audio?
Oh, probably not.
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe somebody has it somewhere.
I have
But those things that I still get people who ask me about the things that they put together.
Yes,
all
the
those
montage.
drops. Yeah, the
Yeah,
montage.
yeah.
I mean, I think I have one of them.
Do you really?
Yeah,
I would
I'll
love.
send that to you.
Okay, please do. I'm not sure that we would have permission to play it on the air. That would be my guess. It'd be tough red tape to traverse, but there's some of those unbelievable.
You brought that out of me. You did that better than anyone I ever worked with, and I worked with a lot of people. You had a way about you. It just got me in trouble.
No, see, first of all, I'm going to take that as a compliment, so thank you. Second of all, the one thing I did not know about you, because I grew up reading you and listening to you and Bowler, I just didn't know how funny you were. That was my
unintentionally. Yeah.
Well, both. No, both, because you're a smart guy, you're witty, and then there was a lot of unintentional moments, like when you asked Dennis Lindsay if you laid the screws to the opposing general manager in a very Chester Shadows type way. Chester Shadows was your nickname for yourself when you were acting in a deviant manner.
You asked me that name, and it just came.
That's what I mean. It was hilarious.
I don't know where that came from.
It was on the heels. Bags Withy. Yeah, when we nicknamed jazz players at the start of every year. It was hilarious. But the Chester Shadows origin story, it was when it was revealed that Mike Vick used the moniker Ron Mexico when he was trying to meet, ladies of the night. We'll call it that. And so
Soiled doves?
Gosh. So I asked you, Gordon, when you're kind of creeping about, what's the moniker you use?
Okay.
And you spit out Chester Shadows, which
I have no idea where that came from.
Well, it's a perfect creepy name if you think about it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and maybe that, I don't know if that's a window into my soul or what, but somehow that came out.
We had you rap on air.
Oh, man, that was embarrassing.
Oh, it was so good, though.
Oh, my gosh.
Little-
How did you get me to do these things? Nobody could get me to do that.
I don't know, but it was so entertaining. You were a good sport. And, yeah, it was a little Notorious B.I.G. I think it was Big Papa we had you rap, right, if I remember right?
And it was horrible.
Yeah.
But it was so bad it was good.
It was hilarious, but a lot of good memories. We could stay in that space for sure, and it's fun that we still get to work together from time to time, Gordo. So, look, we talked to you last week, and we said the one thing that BYU really had to avoid was going to Lubbock and getting smoked.
Yep.
Unfortunately, that's what happened. Texas Tech was a 10.5-point favorite. They didn't just cover, they doubled the spread, and they kicked 5 field goals. Yeah. Credit BYU for their red zone defense, but if Tech scores 2 touchdowns out of the 5.
Could have been 50.
It could have been. So I was not expecting that. Tell me your takeaways from BYU's loss.
I had a feeling that Texas Tech was better, just from the eye test that we talked about. But I didn't expect it to be quite that dominant. I thought the defense would be okay. Texas Tech's offense, I don't think that's necessarily absolutely stellar. But the way BYU could not move the ball, not consistently, not in any way that really resulted in any points, and so many mistakes made. I just think Texas Tech is just flat out better. I mean, who knows if those two teams match up again, or who knows if the Utes get in somehow and they match up again. I think either one of those teams would do better than they did the first time. But I'm not convinced that either one is really better than the Red Raiders.
Yeah, there's a chance. And look, this is a tough one because there are a lot of people around here that, and in the Big 12 footprint, that believe the Big 12 bias is very real, that no, the Big 12 does play football on par with the Big 10 of the SEC. I'm not necessarily one of those people. Is there a chance that Tech is the program that the Big 12 has been waiting for, though, that could go, I don't know, match up with an A&M or a Bama or an Ohio State in a CFP scenario and actually show well?
Yeah, I think that's possible, especially when you have Mr. Campbell's money rolling in.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's really what it takes. And some people hate that. They hate that. But I don't necessarily mind it because it gives opportunities to certain schools that haven't had them in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And these other schools have money. They have money. Do you think Michigan needs money? Come on, they got SC. Norm Chow said SC gets whatever SC wants.
Mm-hmm.
And now, it doesn't always translate to absolute success on the field, but I mean, yeah, I don't really mind it, and I think Tech is in that position. If BYU continues with the money it has, I talked to a booster down there, and he said, we're swimming in money.
Mm-hmm.
We're swimming in money. That's what he told me. And if they are, and if they can apply that money, then they're going to get the athletes, especially with the success that they have. If Utah football, if they had more money, then why wouldn't a player? I'm not sure if I were a quarterback that I'd want to go play there. Sorry, just my opinion. But a lot of other positions, why wouldn't you want to go to Utah? It's a great school, and if you're paying me money, if you're paying me the kind of money that I want, then I might go there. Same thing with BYU. Same thing with Texas Tech. That's what they got going on, and you got to have the money to do it.
I wonder, just to your point about playing quarterback at Utah, is there a chance that Jason Beck and what we've seen from Devin Dampier could change that narrative? I mean, Devin does lead the conference in QBR. Sorsby's 2, Bear's 3, Sawyer Robertson's 4, Jalen Daniels 5, but Devin does lead the Big 12 in QBR. This has not been a quarterback factory. I mean, Tyler Huntley's still getting a paycheck in the NFL. Yeah. But it's a new era with a new offensive coordinator and a quarterback that, for the most part, when he's been healthy, has looked good. Do you think there's a chance Utah could change that narrative so quarterbacks do look at Utah more favorably?
It's a deep philosophical question. Do you believe in change?
Mm.
I mean, do people really change? Some do. I don't know how often it happens that way. Can Utah change that? Yeah, I think it can change. But it takes success to do it. And like you said, if one guy comes in and does it, then somebody else says, I want to be like that guy. Well, maybe I can do that there. And next thing it leads to another and another. And so, yeah, it can change. I just don't know of how much I need more evidence.
Mm-hmm.
If I was a 5-star quarterback, would Utah be something that you would jump to automatically?
If we're assuming that the money is equal among, because that's the problem with this conversation. Like, if you're a 5-star quarterback and Utah's got 1.5 mil for you, but SC's got 2.7,
Right.
like, the decision's made. With the money being equal, I don't think the history is necessarily on Utah's side. I'm just wondering if Jason can potentially change that narrative with his play calling.
I agree. I think he can.
Yeah.
I think, but it's going to take time. And all it takes is one or two, I think, and then you might be on your way. It's kind of like what we talked about with Kevin Young at BYU basketball. The guys can get money all kinds of places. But if you think that guy right there is going to benefit me, not only can I develop as a player, but I can have some success as a player and set me up for the riches I'm going to earn in the NBA, then you want somebody who can guide you to that dream. And that's something. By the way, shout out to my Delaware Fighting Blue Hens.
They were in the game, dude.
They were up 17-4.
Yeah.
In that game.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I watched that game and I thought, I know this is off topic, but
no, you're good.
How good are the Cougars? They have they have really good talent. They got to hit the outside shot, and they got to be able to score inside from time to time. And I'm not sure. I don't know what's going to happen against UConn on Saturday. I mean, do they have top talent? I think they do, but it might take a while to coordinate the whole thing. Certainly the Blue Hens were. I mean, they looked like they were going to stick it to them good, and of course, talent won out at the end. But man, that was more competitive than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I was thinking about you because that's not an easy place to play either. I mean, this was down in Provo. I was wondering if you were watching that game. Little known fact: Gordon is from Delaware. According to the movie Wayne's World, the most boring state in the nation.
That's unfair.
Oh, it's not my opinion. Yeah. I'm from that footprint. But Delaware was up at half. I mean, you referenced their lead early on. At some point, you figured the regression of the mean would happen. Right. My concern for BYU basketball this year, and I don't think it's going to manifest extremely consistently, but I think it's going to hurt them Saturday against UConn. They don't have great size. Yeah. They've got some big wings. But if Keba Keita, Richie had 10 boards last night, which is nice. Keba Keita is about 6'8". I've met him. I've interviewed him. He was a Ute. They get hurt, and they got hurt against Villanova on the defensive glass. I think they were out rebounded against Nova by like 18 boards. It didn't matter last night against Delaware. But I wonder if this is a team that you just have to wonder if they're reading their articles a little bit. It's like Delaware and Provo, we're going to smoke them, and it just took them a minute to wake up.
And they knew UConn was on the schedule.
Yeah.
And probably thinking about that. But BYU, and this is true of almost all college teams now, but BYU, one, has to defend the three better, and they have to hit the three. And Richie Saunders heated up in the second half and took care of that business. Without Rob Wright, I mean, he kept them in that game.
Good player.
And, of course, DeBonsa, it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to watch him develop because he strikes me as a player who's very talented, obviously. But he needs development.
Yeah.
I think he knows he needs development. And as much publicity as he gets and all the praise he gets, he's not there yet.
No, not yet. Yeah.
He'll be there. Look, I'm not doubting the kid. He's going to be there. But that's what makes this year, especially for someone like you, Spence, who studies basketball, watch his development over the year and see what happens with him. And something tells me he's going to be a lot better in March than he is now.
Yeah, UConn so far, a win against New Haven. That's not impressive. Win against UMass Lowell, and then the Nerds to play for Columbia. So really nothing all that exciting for UConn. But
they beat them bad?
Oh, yeah. They smoked all. UConn's really good. I mean, obviously, Danny Hurley's an elite coach. He's a lunatic, but he's an elite coach, an elite recruiter. And they have been able to capture. I always said, like, whether it was St. John's, whether it was Georgetown, UConn or Syracuse or whatever, if any program could capture that footprint in recruiting, because there's high-level basketball played in the Northeast. Yeah. But a lot of people go to Florida, they go to California, they go to Texas. But if you can just be the program that dominates that footprint, you can build a powerhouse, and Danny's done that at UConn.
Yeah, but that's what's interesting about what Kevin Young is doing, and can Alex Jensen do it at Utah, draw guys in from all over the place. Rob Wright, I mean, he's from Newark, Delaware. Mm-hmm. And he was playing against University of Delaware. Is in Newark.
Yep.
And he's sitting there playing from back there. I think he played high school ball in Pennsylvania and in Florida, so he's all over the place too. But now he's playing for Kevin Young. So it gets back to the same idea, what you were talking about, quarterbacks at Utah. If you develop a certain something that people can believe in, It's like having a friendship and feeling like you can trust your friend.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't trust your friend, Spence, how long is he going to be your friend?
Yeah, not long.
It might be platonic. It might be kind of, how you doing?
Once a year type thing.
Yeah, but if you don't trust them, then the relationship is going to dry up and die. And if these coaches, these coordinators develop that kind of idea in players' minds, hey, I trust that guy. He is going to make me the best I can be. I'm going to go there.
It's why, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, proof of concept is vital if you're a head coach, right? So Kevin Young came into the BYU job with a lot of bravado and promise of this and that, but proof of concept with Yegor Demon, who's now with the Nets and played really well for Kevin last year. It's one thing to say I coached Durant or Chris Paul and I can do this for you without proof of concept. Kevin has it. Witt has proof of concept. Like if you're a defensive lineman, we'll give you a list of dudes that came up here as 2 stars that are now millionaires, right? Like we have proof of concept here. And to the point about Utah, whether it's quarterback or wide receiver, like I think Ryan Davis is a nice little wide receiver, right? I don't mean to be dismissive of him. He's got like 56 catches, which is great. But if Utah is going to take the next step up where this time next year, we're not talking about ifs and buts, but we're talking about they've done it, they need better playmakers on the outside. And Devin needs to continue to evolve. But I think it's fair to say up to this point, the proof of concept, at least while they're in school, isn't necessarily there. Now, the interesting part is Tim Patrick and Devon Vele are catching passes in the NFL. And even Steve Smith himself, like maybe the greatest Ute that has had an NFL career, potentially, Alex, we could debate that. But he was a better kick returner here than he was a wide receiver because he didn't have great quarterback play. You're right about the history. It's kind of undeniable.
Yeah, and I like the way you said that, proof of concept. And that's a principle that probably is applicable in a lot of parts of life. But, that's what the coach has to have, along with the NIL benefits that come with it. You're not going to do it just by having money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe you would with a player who doesn't really care that much, but who wants that kind of player? You want somebody who's hungry, who is very talented, and is impressed by what you do. That's the key.
Yeah, it's not only spending money, but that is like Lane Kiffin, who somehow, some way is like the one name that everybody talks about with LSU and Penn State in Florida. Like, I don't know where he is going to land, but he is going to be a very rich man. And at his press conference, he has a weekly presser like all college coaches do. Witt has his on Monday. We replay it on the show. He was asked, what's the most important thing these days for a job to be appealing, essentially. I'm paraphrasing. And that's a leading the witness question because, oh, by the way, you seem to be linked to all these other programs. And he gave a very kind of nuanced answer that took him some time to unpack. But he landed on how much money do you have? How much NIL money do you have? So, you can talk about practice fields and facilities and different uniforms and, the things that made Oregon great under Phil Knight, all of their uniform combinations the kids loved. But from a coaching standpoint, if you're looking around to take a job in collegiate athletics these days, whether it's basketball or football, the first question you're going to have for the administrator, whether it's the president or the AD, is how deep are your pockets?
Because you got to have it.
Right.
You got to have it. This other stuff you're talking about, I still remember when they first built the practice facility that now is going to be replaced and moved to the old shopping mall where Ryan Smith is building all that down there.
Yep.
I remember Karl Malone was mocking the fact that people bring facilities up as the main thing. He said it's a practice facility.
Yeah.
It was like nothing. So this other stuff, it doesn't hurt, but it's not going to seal the deal. And what does is exactly what you just articulated. So it'll be interesting. By the way, while we're on that topic, I wrote a column about this today. I think they're going to post it tomorrow. So how do you feel about Kevin Young signing a G League player?
I feel the same way I feel about them paying A.J. Debonsa $5 million for 6 months of basketball. If it's not against the rules, go do it.
Yep.
And BYU has been able to be opportunistic in a time of very little regulation in collegiate athletics for them just to do what they need to do within the framework of the rules to get the talent they need. You can debate about the methods, and I know there's certain members of the LDS church that don't love the money that's being thrown around. But the other side of that is there are a lot of people that believe if BYU football and basketball are very good, that leads to exposure for the church. And is that the message that is the underlying motivation for administrators at BYU to allow it? My guess would be yes.
And BYU is getting a ton of publicity
right
out of these things. I have no problem with it. I thought Kevin Young articulated it perfectly. He said, hey, if it's okay to sign the guys from Europe, why isn't it okay to sign the guys from the G League?
For sure.
And he delineated or differentiated between NBA contracts and non-NBA contracts. This kid that they signed, this Abdullah Ahmed, is that how they say his
Abdullah
name?
Ahmed, yeah.
He's from Egypt. But, what difference does it make whether he's not under an NBA contract, but he's playing in the G League, or if he's playing in Slovenia or somewhere? It really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And he's right on that. And so, he's doing what he needs to do to get. And by the way, I wonder how good that kid is, because his numbers really aren't very impressive. But he's 22 years old. Do what's legally you're able to do, and that's what BYU's doing. And if you got to pioneer a little bit, and if you got to sort of go against the flow that Bill Self is ticked off about it, or Tom Izzo, because they want control and they don't want to have to scout NBA organizations or any pro league somewhere. Tough, man.
Yeah.
It's and the reason the NCAA is doing this is probably so they don't get sued.
Sure. Because that hasn't gone well for them. They lose every lawsuit they find themselves in. Yeah, but the Self and Izzo comments I read is like, why didn't I think of that? Right? Like, I should have thought of that, So do what you have to do within the framework of the rules so you can help your team win, bottom line. Gordon Monson live in the studio. We'll catch a quick break. We did a little BYU Texas Tech. Now we'll look at as Utah is in Waco to take on Baylor. BYU welcomes in TCU. The chances for both programs to potentially qualify for the CFP or one or the other. A lot of scenarios. So we'll go over those with Gordo coming up next. Wednesday Drive Style on ESPN 700. thoughts from the Salt Lake Tribune. Let's turn on Gordo's mic. There we go. Your buddy Aaron Falk. He's going to stop by.
Good. I just talked to him an hour ago, and he told me he's coming over.
What's it like working with Aaron? You can tell me the truth.
No, really.
Okay.
Yeah, no complaints. Not a single one. I could probably think of one if I had to.
I'm sure we think of a couple.
But no, otherwise, just a really professional, smart guy.
Yeah, he is a smart guy. We always appreciate his time. So Gordon Monson live in studio, talking a little college football here. We discussed BYU's loss to Tech and the latest iteration of the CFP rankings. As we sit here today, the deviant part of me is cheering for the following. And I don't know how this would go down, but there's a chance here. Because maybe TCU gets BYU on Saturday. Maybe. Cincinnati, to me, BYU is built so similar to the way Utah football is built that that's a horrible matchup for Cincinnati. Like game week prior to Cincinnati, for Utah, Cincinnati's defensive line is the lowest ranked defensive line against the run, according to Pro Football Focus. Utah wants to run it down your throat. So I thought Utah was going to roll. I didn't think it was going to be over as quick as it was against Cincinnati, but I feel like BYU is a bad matchup for Cincinnati. I think BYU goes on the road and gets that done. Yes, it's an Eastern time zone, travel situation. Maybe TCU. I doubt it, though. BYU's a favorite. They'll beat UCF. I think BYU wins their final three. And I think they go back to the Big 12 championship game. I believe Utah wins their final three as well.
I do too.
If Utah wins their final three games and stomps Baylor, K-State, and Kansas, and BYU goes back to the Big 12 championship game and gets undressed by Texas Tech, Texas Tech is in, and maybe Utah's in as an at-large over BYU. I mean, when you look at where they're at right now and what the metrics are telling us, that is a legitimate possibility, which would lead to chaos in our state.
Isn't that, you said it, but isn't that ironic that the team that qualifies for the championship game then has to suffer the consequences of that, and the team that avoided the whole thing could be smiled upon, especially if they're kicking these teams around the way they have been the last couple of times. So that is one heck of a – that could happen.
Well, the committee last night, part of me wondered if they would actually have the guts to rank Utah ahead of BYU even last night. Utah comes in at 13, BYU comes in at 12. And ultimately, this would come down to whether or not the committee leans into these metrics that we continue to track every week, because I'm old school. Head-to-head, it has to matter. If head-to-head doesn't matter, like, what are we actually doing here? But when it comes to the metrics that the CFP uses, they're also telling us we're trying to analyze who you are now, not who you were 5 weeks ago. Like Notre Dame has 2 losses, but it was their first 2 games of the season. They've won every game since then, and it was against 2 teams that the CFP committee believes are good. But S&P Plus, your up-to-date S&P Plus is Utah 7, BYU 22. Up-to-date FPI, okay, let me bring this up real quick, is Utah at, as my computer refreshes at a horrible time, is Utah at 9, BYU at 17. So these advanced metrics that the committee uses still indicates they believe Utah is just a better team than BYU, even though BYU beat Utah. And that just lends to the potential of them actually ranking Utah ahead of BYU if both teams have 2 losses, even though BYU beat Utah.
They could. However, they maintained that BYU was 1 slot ahead of
as of last night, yeah.
And I don't really blame them for that from this standpoint. You mentioned these numbers. Numbers can lie sometimes, and it's but not that I don't think Utah is good. I think they're very good, but BYU has 1 fewer loss, and BYU beat them head-to-head. So if they had ranked Utah ahead of BYU, I'm telling you, this place would have gone berserk. Utah fans would have loved it. BYU fans would have been up with they would have been burning pitchforks and burning torches over that. However, how it'll all play out under the scenario that you mentioned, I find that fascinating. I think that is a possibility. I think if BYU does play Texas Tech again in the championship game, they're going to get beat again, and Utah is going to go undefeated. Utah is not going to lose.
I don't think so.
They're not going to lose. Well, I better not guarantee it because I guaranteed last year that they were going to win it all. in the Big 12. So I've learned my lesson a little bit. But that's a very, very good team. And if they play up to their potential and they play the way they have been, that's going to be a scenario. They're going to be sitting right there.
Yeah.
And if BYU, if wherever they are in the rankings, BYU is going to suffer another loss, in my opinion, against Texas Tech. Now, it might not be quite as – that game was horrible.
It was over pretty quick, yeah.
I mean, it just sucked. And I think BYU is better than what they showed, but Texas Tech is the real deal. So if they play again, I think Texas Tech wins. BYU picks up another loss. Now the records are, 2 losses for Utah, 2 losses for BYU, and Utah's been kicking everyone's butt. That could happen.
You know, what else could happen is the committee once again could say this is a one-bid league and it's Tech and no one else is getting in, because, ultimately both BYU and Utah need help in front of them.
I hate that, Spence.
Yeah.
The reason is
Tough.
Texas Tech is so good. They are really, really – how did they lose to Arizona State? I didn't watch that game. I don't understand how that could happen. It did happen. But these Utah and BYU have lost to Texas Tech. And Texas Tech would beat probably they might beat 2/3 of the teams in the top 12.
Maybe even more than that. I mean, it's hard to say as far as where they would stack up against the the Bamas and the A&Ms. A&M has avoided a lot of the big dogs in the SEC in the regular season, but they're going to have to play a really good SEC team if they want to win the championship. But you need Texas to lose at least one more time. They've got Georgia between the hedges. They've got A&M for their final game. Oklahoma is in Tuscaloosa this weekend. You need Bama to win. And can Pitt get Notre Dame this weekend? You definitely – what are you smirking at? I've known you for way too long. You're smirking at something.
I just had a thought that you nailed me on many, many years ago. And
I know what it is. Yeah. You want to bring it on air? You
no,
good for today?
No,
okay.
Not that time.
Okay. I know exactly what it is. Between the hedges. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Still to this day, he is 62 going on 12. He cannot help himself. Look at you.
I'm a lot older than 62.
Well, I was trying to be nice.
Thank you.
Okay.
But your point is very well made, and I mean, it's going to be interesting. By the way, are you up for a 16-team playoff?
Yeah, I say expand it. It's been fun. The expanded playoff makes for good conversation. I respond to questions like this with one bottom line: what's better for my job? What's better for the show?
Well, it would be more inclusive for the teams around here.
Do you remember when you insulted Shelley Meyer on there?
Oh, did I do that?
Oh, my God.
I really like Shelley.
Well, I know, but you're like, hey, I think you maybe forgot we were on the radio? Because Shelley came back into town. It was a decade after Urban was here. And for some reason on the radio, like, hey, did anyone else see Shelley Meyer? Well, and I was like, yeah, Gordon, what are you saying? Like, well, she had it going on back in the day. I'm like, well, what are you saying now? And your final response was, well, it's been 10 years.
I'm sure she's a beautiful woman still, besides she's smart and all the other things.
No, it's too late now.
They're more important.
There's no going back at this
Thanks
point.
for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
Well, I had forgotten the between the hedges conversation.
Will you stop saying that? Because every time you say it, I can't stop laughing. I mean, because that was a totally innocent comment.
It didn't sound innocent back in the day is the thing. And that's what you used to do. You used to make the comment and then plead innocence like, who, little old me?
That one. Gosh. I wish we could tell everybody, but I just can't.
No, I mean, it's kind of like, could you really bring back the Office TV show in the modern day and age? The problem is we have a generation behind mine, and they're all walking HR ladies. They all just want to monitor everything you say to try to get you fired. So there are different rules now, Gordon, than there were back in the day.
Yeah, if there were 16 teams in the playoffs, I think that BYU and Utah would both get in. However, this is the problem, is that there's such a bias toward the SEC and the Big Ten that I don't know whether that's overcomable, if that's a word.
They just need losses. I think Texas is going to lose. I think Oklahoma is going to lose. I don't know that Notre Dame will. And then it just comes down to how much, like if the committee is really leaning into who are you now, by the time the final iteration of the CFP rankings are released, it will have been about a month and a half since Utah lost to BYU.
Yeah.
So do they really even look at that? And if the committee thinks BYU is really good and Utah is just a different team now than they were then, and they don't really penalize Utah for that loss, or if Tech continues to rise and it's the only 2 losses Utah has, Like, they've been plus 140 since they lost to BYU. Like, they're not just beating teams, they're stomping teams. Yeah. And if the committee is really trying to analyze who are you now, then Utah does have this shot to get in. According to the metrics, Utah, 36% chance to make the CFP. BYU's at 27. I mean, that's just where we're at with the numbers.
Part of the problem is it's back to what we used to complain about the old BCS. Yep. And even before that, the Bowl Alliance. I mean, it was always about a beauty pageant. And if BYU had lost to Texas Tech, or for that matter, if Utah had lost to Texas Tech by 3, something like that, then it would have been a respectable loss. But losing by 22 in the case of the Cougars and 24 in the case of the Utes, the committee doesn't like that.
Nope.
But now it's working in Utah's favor because they're kicking everybody around. So maybe it'll make up for itself. But, I just think Texas Tech really deserves to be maybe among the top 5 and probably would represent itself well. The problem there is, and it's the problem with – hold on. Do you have a problem with playoff inflation?
No, not really.
Some people really do.
Yeah.
Because they want to concentrate on the regular season in any sport, whether it's college football or baseball, anything else.
Yeah.
But to me, that's part of what makes it such an interesting, compelling thing is on any given Saturday. A team that isn't as good can win. And that sort of throws it into the blender a little bit because we're sitting here saying how great Texas Tech is if they get in the playoff, which they will. What happens if they have an off day? What happens if they play the way they did against Arizona State?
Yep.
And then what happens? Nobody cares if it's an SEC team or if it's a Big Ten team, but if it's a Big 12 team, then somehow you are demoted. Look, they were never that good.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen to the SEC so much. It doesn't really happen as much in the Big Ten. So it reminds me a little bit about when Utah and BYU were in the old Mountain West. They couldn't afford a bad loss at the wrong time, or else everyone would think, see, look, they're not that good. Notre Dame loses twice in a row to start. No one's going to think about that if they keep winning.
Well, and Utah even had 2 seasons where they won every game on their schedule, and then they didn't win a championship. It's like, wait, we play in a sport where we can win every game that's in front of us and we can't hang a banner unless we choose to anyway, whatever, we're a self-proclaimed national champ. But to your point about the expanded postseason, when they expanded it to 12, I said, well, look, all we're going to do now is debate who 13 through 16 is and should they be in the top 12. If they go to 16, we'll say, well, wait a second, 17 through 20 is getting screwed. The one element that I don't love about a playoff system that rewards at-large berths is it becomes a beauty pageant,
right? And
teams know this. So they're not going to schedule teams in their non-con that are challenging.
Great point.
Right? And I hate that as a consumer. Like, I don't want to watch Idaho State play Alabama week 9 or whatever it is. One of the things I do like that the committee has done is they're not penalizing Texas for going to Ohio State to start the season, even though they lost. It was a close game against the number 1 team in the country. So if they're going to continue to expand and make this a beauty pageant, you need to bring scheduling uniformity here so teams have to schedule good non-con opponents and then, do something like Joel Klatt's idea is if you win your conference the next year, you have to play a more challenging conference schedule than the team that finished last in your conference. Because I referenced A&M. In the regular season, A&M will avoid Georgia. They're going to avoid Bama. They're going to avoid, now they played LSU. They're going to close the season with Texas. I think they're avoiding Ole Miss. Yeah, 3 of the top 4 teams in the SEC, Texas A&M is not playing this year. Now, if they're going to win the SEC, they're going to see one of those teams in the SEC championship game. But it makes it difficult to accurately analyze if one team is playing a bear of a schedule and the other team gets a cakewalk. And if I'm an AD or an administrator and you're telling me that I'm in a beauty pageant, then I'm going to schedule soft non-con teams so we stay clean and you think we're better than we might be.
And all of that goes, if you want to flip it back in time to the Utes in 2008 and 2004, you can make this argument against those teams because they're playing in the Mountain West, And I thought that 2004 team was so freaking good. I think they could have beat some of the big-name clubs if they'd been given that opportunity. But scheduling does matter. And if I just remember some Ute fans saying when BYU fans were bragging about being undefeated and Utah fans were implying, well, if you had played Texas Tech, you'd have a loss, just like the Utes did. And that's true, and so I'm sort of arguing with myself on this again, Spence, because there are points to be made for strength of schedule and for, hey, winning is winning. Mm-hmm. And somewhere, I think the committee, this is part of the difficulty of what the committee's trying to do, because they're trying to analyze all that stuff. And you mentioned some of the numbers that comes into play, but they're also trying to be reasonable about it, whatever the heck that means. Mm-hmm. And I think Utah is highly thought of, but BYU is still 12. And if those two teams win out, then, there's a – and I wish 3 teams could get in. Mm-hmm. I don't like what do you think of the automatic bids? When the talk of SEC dominating in that regard, I hate that crap.
Yeah, it's tough. They did adjust it. So, like, for instance, there is a world where the ACC gets completely left out because you're not automatically in if you win a P4 conference. It's the top 5 highest-ranked championship teams. The G5 is going to grab one. Miami could get an at-large bid, but there's this weird path for the ACC where like an 8-4 Duke team could win the championship. Yeah. And the committee's not putting Duke in even if they win the ACC championship. They might put Miami in. So I actually like the adjustments they've made because it does seem like they're at least trying to figure out who the best teams are this time of year, which will lead to the best matchups. And, of course, they're going to lean in a little bit to the brand bias because part of who they answer to are powerful television executives that would like Notre Dame on their TV. And that's just what it is. But before I say you lose, I've phrased this question to Kamarani earlier. Let me ask it to you. A 10-2 season for the Utes that does not end in a college football playoff opportunity, in your opinion, is what?
A good season, not a great one.
10-2 is a good season for sure.
It's a good, solid season. But again, and this is a compliment to Utah football. Mm-hmm. I think that's what they. If you asked Kyle Whittingham that, he probably would say, "No, I don't want that. That's not what I want." Even if you guaranteed him that, I don't think he'd take it, because Utah football's beyond that, in my opinion. So good, very solid, and an honorable season, but. The Utes got to get in the freaking playoff. They got to get to the championship game, theoretically, and then get into that playoff. And as you said, that could happen still. They could get into the playoff. Is it easier for them to get into the college football playoff than the Big 12 championship game?
I think at this point the answer is yes. Because look, the other thing, man, in this sport, like I was playing a little golf last weekend, and all of a sudden
how'd you hit them?
Actually, I shot a 75 at Mountain Del Lake.
Whoa.
Which, if you know that course, the first 3 holes I'm usually 70 over.
Narrow.
Because I lose like 5 golf balls, but I actually play pretty well. But I get the alert on my phone that Penn State is beating Indiana. And look, Penn State has like a top 20, 25 roster because they were the number 2 team in the country to start things off. But their coach is out of a job, and Indiana's thought to be on the way to be undefeated and maybe win Heisman for Mendoza. And I'm like, it just reminded me, like, the sport is bonkers. Like, every weekend, something happens that you don't see coming. Is it completely unfounded that TCU rolls into Provo and beats BYU? No. Could Baylor give Utah a tougher game than we all believe? Absolutely they could, because this sport is weird. Every single weekend, something weird happens. The tough part about analyzing it is you just kind of have to talk about it as if the favorites are going to win, and what is that going to look like? Because there's no way. It's why I tell my listeners, like, you want my advice on betting on sports? Here it is. Don't. Yeah. Because nobody knows. Like, if we could predict the upsets, then I'll go to Vegas and not do 4 hours of radio anymore. We can't. It's impossible to predict.
Well, there's going to be upsets. The question is it going to affect the game you're betting on?
Right.
And there's really no way of knowing that. Those guys down there in Vegas are usually pretty – I don't know how they do it. They must have sources inside of the programs and whatnot, but, probably someone could get in trouble for that. But I don't bet on sports. I know a lot of people who do, and good for them, but I'm not doing that.
One more thing here, Gordo, then I'll set you loose. This is called wasting time while I'm trying to find my read.
Oh, okay.
I asked Chris this as well. So last year, as the season got away from Utah, mostly because of injuries and Cameron's inability to stay healthy, a lot of us wondered aloud, like, is there anything that could happen this year to affect Coach Witt's decision to stay or go? Then the season gets loose. You know, it's one of the worst seasons under Kyle, the Utah football has had. And we all wonder, like, does he want to go out like this? Well, he let us know on a couple of occasions, one on Sean's show, then one on, he kind of doubled down at Big 12 Media Days, that, yes, he did not want to go out like that. 10-2, no CFP. Does that affect his decision at all? Because the fact of the matter is, if you're waiting to check all the boxes, you might be waiting forever.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with waiting because he's making so much money right now. But I think there are forces within the Utah program who just as soon see Kyle go away. And I think that's I don't need to get specific on that, but Kyle will go away when Kyle wants to go away. And he's got the backing of certain boosters who want him to do it that way. There might be other boosters who just soon see him go at this point and let Morgan take over. But I don't think that's really going to come into his if he's 10-2, I don't think he's going to sit there and go, well, I didn't get to the championship, so I'm
didn't beat
around.
BYU.
Yeah, I don't. Although I do think he likes the idea of having Devin Dampier around for another year.
Yeah. A roster with a lot of young players that could be back. Well, always fun, my friend. Great to see you. Okay, don't be a stranger and enjoy the games this weekend.
I will. Did you find your read?
I got it.
Well, get to it.
I got enough for me to get through this one. We're going to have to update some copy points, but that's behind baseball, inside baseball.
I could illustrate for your listeners what that looked like because, you ever see those in those old-time shows, those jugglers that will juggle an apple and a chainsaw and a broomstick and things are flying all over the place. Papers were flying all over in the studio here. I'm glad you found what you needed.
We dialed it in. I'm sure our YouTube viewers enjoyed that. Gordon, good to see you, my friend.
Okay.
Gordon Monson, Salt Lake Tribune, sltrib.com is where you go. He's got a piece coming out potentially today, if Aaron Falk will post it, who will be in studio in about 30 minutes, so we're going to guilt him into doing that. All right, before we catch a break, I want to tell you about my friends at America First Credit Union. We had our guy Dave in this week. Really, really good dude. And if you're not happy with your current banking situation, like, for instance, I was with a big national branch for a number of years, had a error on their part that I was trying to get sorted out, went into the branch. They would not give me the time of day. So I just left. It's like, okay, you're not going to give me attention. I'm just going to take off. So if you're currently disenfranchised with your banking situation, America First is the spot for you to look at. They're the official credit union of the University of Utah, the official credit union of the Utah Jazz, the official credit union of RSL Soccer. You can get early entry to all the venues. You get a bunch of great deals on ticket offers, a bunch of discounts at the team merch store. And right now, they're offering you a $100 membership offer. They're just hooking you up with $100 on the house. You also have the option of opening up an account for your teen or your child. They're going to give you $50 for your teen or your child to kind of learn how money works at a very young age. So make the switch, open up a checkings and a savings account with our good friends at America First Credit Union. They have 87 branches in our state. You can stop by one of those or simply go online to americafirst.com/deals. 2 hours down, 2 hours to go. Zach Harper and Aaron Falk. That is your 4 o'clock hour before we launch into the 5 o'clock hour of the program on a Wednesday afternoon. So keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, even though all Pitbull songs suck horribly, there has to be, like, there's got to be one that's better than this one. We have to all agree upon one that's the most digestible.
I'll leave that to you and your palate.
Zach on the Zach Harper's our guest Wednesday afternoon, NBA Daily Systyle. There has to be like the 2 or 3 best Pitbull tracks, don't there?
I don't know if you can whittle down such an immense, incredible catalog to 2 or 3. I can try. Like Timber's a banger, right?
No, not right.
The playoffs took it.
No, that's the origin story of my disdain for Pitbull. That's my most unfavorite song.
Well, that's not on him. That's on Joakim Noah for being in those commercials.
That's actually not wrong. I'm just saying if we're gonna do this week in and week out, like the 3 most digestible would be appreciated.
But then we're just doing the same 3 in rotation. I don't know. I don't know if I like that.
Well, let's just consider it. The winter solstice is on the way, and I thought you'd be in a better mood, but that's on me.
Yeah. No, it's gloomy here in LA. It's a little chilly, so it's just the moods are changing here.
Doesn't sound like someone's been manifesting during the off season. I'm not going to lie.
No, I manifested quite a bit.
Oh,
manifested quite a bit. So
okay.
yeah, and it's coming to fruition because I'm within my power.
Okay. Good.
And I don't let anyone take that power from me.
Okay, good.
And I protect my energy.
Do you feel seen and heard? Is what I want to know.
Constantly, thankfully.
Okay,
but
good.
Not always. It wasn't always, but yes,
good.
I currently feel seen and heard.
So when it comes to your manifestation process, are you existing in the feeling as if your manifestation is already manifested?
You have to.
Okay.
If you don't, you're not manifesting properly.
All right. No, I agree. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I have this TV on in the studio, and it says NBA tip-off brought to you by Popeyes, and it's the inside the NBA guys. Does it just? I don't know, man. It just feels different to me. I used to love this show. It just feels different. Does it feel different to you?
It does, and I think part of it is that it is not every week. I think that, like, obviously it felt different anyway because there's an ESPN logo on the first one and everything, and now, like, there's, you'll see it on NBA TV and all that stuff. I understand that, but to me it's different because it's not every week, so I don't feel like we're checking in every single week with them, and I think it ruins the rhythm of things. It's not bad, it's just not the same.
What about overall takeaways from the new era of consumption of pro basketball where, you got to have different apps? I think the Sportico projection was you got to pay about $800 throughout the course of the year if you want to watch every game. And look, who watches every game? I mean, I don't even watch every game, but have you found it difficult to kind of traverse to try to watch NBA basketball this year?
No, but I have I've got a different account for League Pass, so it will kind of loop everything in there to the NBA app for me. But I don't think it's easy. Like, I think NBC is doing a phenomenal job. They're doing a phenomenal job. I think Amazon is doing a phenomenal job with their broadcasts. But I'm also in a lucky place where, like, I don't have to go searching other apps and hunting everything. Like, it just all goes into my NBA app. And so I would imagine, like, consumers, like, one, super expensive if you want to try to, like, watch as much as possible. And two, not all that easy to do. What they should do is allow it to be like the one I've got, and everything gets filtered into that, and then you can pick, like, I want the Peacock broadcast, or no, I want the local Magic broadcast instead, or whatever that is. I
find by the way, where are you posting your stuff these days? I have your Twitter poll, and look, I'm not judging because I am very much not on that platform anymore either, but where are you at these days?
Blue Sky, baby.
You're at Blue Sky. Okay, good to know. I'm going to switch over there. And look, ultimately, I kind of like what Amazon is doing. So it's because you bring up NBC, and look, you and I are kind of the same age where the round ball rock will always hit no matter what. It just always will. Period, end of story. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. Give me more Michael Jordan. Give me all the Michael Jordan. I don't care what it is. But you have two different approaches when it comes to the two new partners, whereas NBC is relying on nostalgia and Amazon is really just trying to break ground and do their new thing. Does that make sense?
It does, but I where I'll push back on that for NBC is I think their studio show's really good. I think Vince Carter's really good. I think Tracy McGrady's really good. I think Mello has done a good job in that space. Like, I think they're building chemistry, and I think their studio stuff is good. Like, Vince Carter did a thing about who he wants in the dunk contest. I think it was last night or the night before, and I really enjoyed that. Like, I think their presentation overall is excellent. But Amazon, in terms of, like, the studio product and how they're presenting things, like, I've been blown away by how good they are.
How do I get access to this Cool Kids League Pass code that you have?
That's a good question. I can text you. I don't know why it works that way. I just know it works that way.
I believe there's a full moon in a week and a half. Should we wait until that's lining up?
No, I think you got to start manifesting before the full moon.
That's true.
So that it can, yeah.
Okay.
And then do you know about the New Year's Eve thing?
Oh, no. No, I don't. Do I want to?
I guess I can't remember if this is for like prosperity or like love life or something. You're like as the clock strikes midnight, you're supposed to like eat like green grapes under a table or something, and that's supposed to give you luck and love. I don't know. I'm gonna have to revisit that one, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Dude, I can't keep up. And I've just
it's a lot.
I more or less have given up. I mean, did you
try living here?
Yeah, no, I hear you. Have you been forced to read that Untamed book, that Glennon Doyle book that just ruined everything?
No,
okay.
No. I would rather pretend I can't read than do that.
It might be my last resort, dude. I might just have to read it and learn to speak this language.
No, because I think the problem in that is I think it would be a lot like making the 48 Laws of Power like something you've really learned from. I think it's that kind of effect where like you find out the people who really love that book and you're like, oh, I should avoid you at all costs. You're not a smart or good person.
No, that's actually a good point.
Yeah. All
right, back to basketball. How's your dating life, man? How's it going?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay.
It's pretty good right now. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good to hear. Good to hear. All right, moving away from, I don't really want to talk about the new All-Star process. Do you?
No, let me see it work.
Yep.
And then I'm interested.
Mm-hmm.
But also I don't want it's got to work for years.
Mm-hmm.
Because we did the thing with the Elam ending. The first one was awesome, and then they kind of stopped caring. Which is still to me the format doesn't matter. It's about how do you get the players to care.
And I think
and
we've
the whole argument of hey, they make money and they shouldn't. You shouldn't have to. Yeah, you're right, but you do. So now how do we do that?
I don't know that there's a way. I think I've become to resign to the fact that, and you're not wrong. Like, no matter what the format is, these guys have to show up and actually try. And I just don't think they're ever going to. I just don't.
Yeah, I don't know what the incentive is. Their money is guaranteed. They make hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for the guys who make that game, right? The guys who get to participate in that game. They're signing deals for $250, $300, $400 million now. Once they get into like the second and third contracts of their career, and like this is the thing where I think about this with like LaMelo Ball or Trae Young, like these guys who are super talented who just do not produce the winning at certain levels that you would hope that they would, and people are like, oh well, maybe this and maybe that, and I always think about it's a very human thing to be like, I'm making hundreds of millions of dollars doing things this way, and you want to tell me it doesn't work? I don't know how you do that to people. So for All-Stars, like, they're making hundreds of millions of dollars. They're the most famous basketball players in the world, and you're going to tell them the way you're doing this All-Star game doesn't work. I don't know. They keep making the All-Star game, and they're making hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't know that you can convince a human being of that.
Do we ever get to the point where it doesn't become a thing? Because unfortunately, and I would love to give some sort of altruistic response that isn't involving capitalism and money, but once the money became so stupid, the league lost any sort of leverage it had to have these guys show up to All-Star Weekend and actually give a rip, and also any leverage it had to actually show up and do your job that we've discussed. Do we ever get to a point where the All-Star game isn't even a thing?
No, because I think there's still so much money in it for the league and corporate sponsors and stuff, and you still always have to feed that beast. I think like if we want to manifest and we want to like cross our fingers
and we
get our
do,
crystals and everything,
and we do.
What is it? Is it? There's some like incense you're supposed to. Oh man, Sao Paulo or something. I can't remember what it is. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
You're supposed to like purify the room with that. But if like I think best case scenario, pie in the sky, we get to a point where it's been so embarrassing, the guys coming up want to change that, right? I think Wemby is one of those guys who will treat it that way. Unfortunately, we don't have 24 Wembys in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, I think you're going to have to, like, as guys retire, that gets filtered out, and you hope that the guys that come up want to be wired that way. But that's also, like, that's very, like, pie in the sky, I'm hoping here.
I do believe you were referencing burning sage to purify a room.
No, it's not. It's not sage.
Oh.
It's not sage. It's a wood.
Huh.
I think it's called Palo Santo. But I could be messing that up.
Yeah, well, that sounds like something someone in LA would do. In Salt Lake, we simply stick with sage.
Quite a few.
Yeah.
That's quite a few.
Goodness gracious.
That's where I learned it.
We're screwed, man. We made it this far. We blew it. We have no chance.
Over.
Yeah, we're
It's
done.
over.
We're
Yeah,
done.
It's done.
We obviously have to talk to you about Nico. Look,
Yeah.
I feel like there's so many people in media now that will simply zig when everyone zags, that I figured I'd hear from somebody pretty reputable that actually liked what he did, but like zero people were like, we'll give it some time, maybe work out. And we started talking about Anthony Davis as if he was Bismack Biyombo based off of the deal, and he's not a bad player, but it did feel like the clock was ticking once he decided to make that deal. What's your reaction to the Mavs firing Nico Harrison?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us knew that it was going to happen sooner rather than later. And I think the interesting thing is, like, Christian Clark and Sam Amick and Joe Varden put out something on The Athletic today about like kind of the behind the scenes stuff. And the interesting thing to me is it does seem like everyone is distancing themselves from like being a part of that, right? Like some of the reporting seems like Jason Kidd threw him on the bus, Patrick Dumont threw him on the bus. Like there are a lot of people who ended up being involved at one point that now want nothing to do. I think it's because he was so bad at, like, he was never going to convince people this was a good thing. But the way he pitched it, it didn't even seem like he believed it. I would rather he just come out and say, I think Luka is fat and not going to be good enough, and I want to change that. If he had come out and said that, it wouldn't be popular. They'd still want him fired, all these, but at least, like, it would be honest. Because I think that's ultimately what it came down to. He didn't like Luka's lifestyle. He didn't like Luka being out of shape. It's weird to play as much basketball as you do and be as out of shape as Luka was. But he was still like the fifth best player in the league at worst, right? Like, he was still so good. And he just kept trying to sell it on certain things, except all the things he was against in terms of, like, lack of availability and worrying about that. He brought in an older guy who's not available. So you can't tell me like anyone believes the things you're peddling. People try to dip their toe in like the waters of, like, maybe he was right. Like when the Lakers got bounced by the Wolves a little bit of like, oh yeah, Luka wasn't all that good and everything, but no one really believed it. I do believe it's the worst trade in NBA history. There are others that are up there, but this was never going to work out.
Luka has 260 points in 260 minutes this year. Like, and ultimately the other thing Nico did is he reset the Lakers, which nobody was asking to do. Like, don't reset the Lakers, Oh,
if Anthony Davis was still on New Orleans and he had traded Luka to New Orleans, Dallas would still be furious. I don't think the rest of the league would have cared as much about this. Like, there is that thing about, like, oh, you just gave the Lakers another superstar in their mid-20s. What are you doing? And I think that was also a big part of the public, kind of reaction to it.
For sure. All right, let's do, I will say this. Like, the Jazz stink. They're not going to win a lot of games this year. But you're starting to see a direction in a way that we haven't. This is year 4 of the rebuild, even though they want us to call 3 years of a teardown, and they're rebuilding now.
Feels like 4 months of a rebuild, if we're being honest.
Yeah, it's I understand what they want us to digest, but we're starting year 4. And look, they're not going to win a lot of games. They shouldn't win a lot of games because just like last year, we have this top 8 protected pick that goes to OKC if they're out of the bottom 8, and that is an asset you have to hold on to if you're a team in Salt Lake rebuilding. But you do see some direction. Like Ace is finally in the starting lineup. He had 20 last night. There was a lot of buzz about Keontae's offseason, and that appears to be real. He's trying on defense. He's looked good. So the early returns after, 11 games for the Utah Jazz, I think, are better than I was expecting. Zach, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, also like coming off they dropped like 150 something on
152,
on this poor Indiana corpse that's out there every single night. That helps the perception like in the immediate. I do think, and it's annoying. It's the same conversation, but you look at this draft class. It's at minimum 3 stars deep, right? At minimum 3 stars deep between Darren Peterson, Cameron Boozer, and AJ DeMantha. Like you winning, like going out there and fighting with pride and everything, and getting 29 wins, and then missing out on one of these guys is so stupid. It doesn't mean you should lose every game, and I love the idea if you're going to rebuild and you're going to tank, you need to be competitive on some level, right? It can't just be getting your teeth kicked in for, 82 games. And I do think like maybe they have more of that balance, and you never know what's going to happen with the lottery odds, right? Like obviously Dallas wins at 1.8%. The Jazz and the Pistons have been like in the mix for the last, 3-4 years and weren't getting any kind of luck. Like I get all that. There's no guarantee of it. Just because there's no guarantee of it doesn't mean you shouldn't be angling for it, right? You still have to put yourself in the best odds and position to do that, and that's by being a bottom 3, bottom 4 team in the league. And so, I think the Jazz will eventually settle into that, although I didn't anticipate Indiana being this horrendous. So, maybe – and New Orleans looks like they're just already ready to fall apart. So maybe there's more competition there than there should be. But I do think the importance of like I was big on Ace Bailey going to the draft, and I didn't believe all the nonsense of he doesn't want to do this and he doesn't want to. I never bought any of that stuff. So I'm a big fan of the kid. I want to see him really develop throughout the year. I love what I've seen from Keontae early. I like Bryce Sensabaugh is a guy that I never really considered before, and then he looked good last year. He looks good already to start this year. Like I'm in on him. It stinks what happened with Walker, but yeah, like you can tank but remain somewhat competitive, and I think that's the best culture set moving forward for a team like the Jazz.
Yeah, you referenced Walker, and we'll end on this. Felt really bad for the kid because, of course, since you and I spoke, season-ending shoulder surgery. He was asked prior to the start of the season at his preseason media availability about the extension that he did not get, the rookie extension they did not offer, and he admitted that he was frustrated and said he was just going to try to keep his head down. So ultimately, you're gutted simply for the kid because you want him to get back and healthy, and chances are this injury will cost him millions and millions of dollars. It does just take one team with cap space to fall in love with you. Then the Jazz will have the opportunity to match that because he will be restricted. Right. As cruel as this sounds, though, Zach, it actually could benefit the Jazz because he was playing really well through 5 games, and as we've already outlined, they do need to lose. And they might be able to get him on a bit of a discount as a result of this injury. So just unpack your thoughts on that before I set you loose.
Yeah, I think the one thing I worry about is, and I don't know if this is a trend or if it was just this past off season, I do wonder if we're going to see more guys take the qualifying offer.
Mm-hmm.
I do wonder because I don't have a better system. So I've been saying this for years, and people are like, well, how do you fix it? I'm like, I don't know. I hate the restricted free agency system, the way it ties that, like, because a lot of teams won't do something for a guy they may think about signing to an offer sheet to lure him away from the team because it ties up your cap space for like 3 days, and like you can't afford to lose that time if you don't end up getting that player, and so I think the qualifying offer could become more of a trend because Walker's missing so much of the year. Like I'm with you. I think he probably did cost himself some money unless the team just really believes in him and they've got cap space and they want to throw a bunch of money on an offer sheet and dare the Jazz to match it. I think like that this offseason is way more set up the 2026 summer is a way more set up for that around the league than 2025 was for some of these guys. And also Walker is just a much different player than what that crop of guys was. But I feel gutted for the kid. I was enjoying watching him play. I've really enjoyed watching him since he got to the NBA. I still think he'll end up making about what he should, but he might have to wait a year. And then at that point, I don't know if that's a good risk by the Jazz if that ends up costing them, because we've seen players take that personally and go elsewhere in the past.
Zach, I'll set you loose to listen to the latest Mel Robbins podcast, buddy. Appreciate the time, okay?
Dale.
All right, there he is, Zach Harper, our buddy NBA Daily Assist style. Aaron Falk, big fan of Mel Robbins, is going to join us live in studio coming up. Then we'll move into the 5 o'clock hour of the program. So we've got some college football coming your way on a Wednesday show right here on ESPN 700. Was this a request? Was this an Aaron Falk request? I mean, I wouldn't, I wouldn't expect you wanting a little Dave on a Wednesday.
I would have gone Gordon Lightfoot for Cambrani.
Did you hear it earlier?
I didn't know.
Yeah, he actually.
I saw the post. I've been in meetings, but
yes, he brought us in with a little Gordon Lightfoot. It is the 50th anniversary of the sinking of the ship.
A monumental moment for suburban dads everywhere. Everyone's locked in on podcasts, documentaries. You either become like a birder or obsessed with boats, I think.
Indeed.
At some point.
Indeed. He hit me with what is your knowledge of the Edmund Fitzgerald incident? I outside of knowing about it, I didn't know a lot of details. Would you have been able to handle that on live radio?
No, but I was outside of the Gordon Lightfoot reference, and I know, it was a Great Lakes crash.
Indeed.
But I did look up a few factoids today just to check my 40+ white box.
Mm-hmm.
And the captain of the Edmund Fitzgerald was going to retire. He took one last run because he was going to get a bonus, and he needed to pay for his sick wife is one of the things. So the healthcare system in America single-handedly responsible for the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, as far as I'm concerned.
And several other things that we don't need to get into on the show today. That is a tragically sad tidbit, man. Jeez. I mean, the whole thing is very sad.
The good news is, for years and years, for a century, there were wrecks on the Great Lakes all the time. We were just letting them go to the bottom. Didn't matter.
Yeah.
We had to get whatever ore pellets or whatever we're coming across. No commercial wrecks of this nature since the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Did you also learn that today?
That one I did know, actually.
Very impressive. Aaron Falk is in studio. He's the sports editor of the Salt Lake Tribune, despite how we've started the interview.
Trying to get a boat job.
Give me an update, man. What's going on? How are you?
I'm great, man. We are, in exciting times. Like, there is a lot happening, and that's when it's the most fun. When all these seasons converge, and there are storylines and things that people can actually care about. And it's really cool to see both Utah and BYU at a place where 12-13, where something could happen. See what DeBonce is going to do in Provo or Boston this weekend. And obviously, Jazz off to a scorching hot start. 4 wins.
Well, I will say they stink, and they're going to they're going to stink all year, and that's fine.
Yes.
They need to stink all year. They have to maintain this draft pick, especially in a draft like this. Like the Pete kid from Arizona. I didn't even know about it. Like, there are 4 or 5 legitimately franchise, potentially changing pieces. So, when it comes to Jazz basketball, it will be a lot like it was last year, where they have to hold on to this asset. You want to see growth from the young players, but the losses aren't bad news. Now, at some point, we will change this conversation, but it can't be this year, Aaron. It just can't.
Completely agree. And I think there is a reason to watch this year that didn't exist for me last year. Even though many of the same players were there, you look at, talk about Keontae George or whatever, the guys from previous drafts, not just, setting aside Ace Bailey, but I didn't really care what happened to John Collins or Colin Sexton.
Respectfully,
right? Like,
sure.
like John Collins being a 30-point scorer from time to time was never going to be there when they were good again.
It was empty calories,
right.
yeah.
And so, that's a nice thing to see, but it doesn't really mean anything for the long term. And so now, if you're a sicko, you can at least watch and say, hey, Keontae George looks percentage points better or what have you. And honestly, MVP to Walker Kessler for this torn labrum, because that guarantees them this draft.
I know,
they
man.
have no chance without him.
Now, and it sounds like a very cruel thing to say. And I said it the day after. I'm like, I'm sorry if this sounds cutthroat. From a business standpoint, this is actually preferable. Because not only is your starting center Yusuf Nurkic now, and, your ability to win basketball games have kind of, gone down as far as the percentages go, they're probably going to get him $10 to $12 million cheaper than what they would have if he would have stayed healthy, maybe even more. I mean, from a business standpoint, if you're looking for things that will benefit the Jazz down the road, unfortunately, this injury is one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. He's, he has enough in on the CV at this point to show that he is worth a sizable contract
For sure.
But you're right. Like he could have taken this next leap where someone maybe gets you to a situation where you're like, do I want to go that far in a match? But yeah, I mean, on court this year, they have no defensive chance without that guy protecting the rim.
They really didn't have a defensive team with him, and they're really bad defensively still. I mean, for all of the things people have pointed to about progress here, progress there, if you dig into the numbers, and you know me, I'm all about the data, okay? I want to grind tape and understand data. They're doing the same things they did a year ago. They're turning the ball over. They don't guard. They're a bad team. But I think the ace dynamic is something – he might be, Aaron, the most exciting prospect we've had since Donovan. In fact, let me rephrase that. He is. You know what I mean?
Completely agree. And it seems like he not in the same way that Donovan had personality. Donovan had a very, calculated in some ways, but tailor-made personality for a young star, a young scorer, particularly in this market. And, Ace Bailey isn't that, but he is showing, I think, a joy that I didn't know. I didn't know anything about Ace Bailey.
Sure, yeah.
He was a good player at Rutgers, right? But, like, he is showing some joy and charisma and passion that, especially in the wake of whatever draft night controversy there was or wasn't. Yeah. You contrast that with what you see from him now, and there really is a chance for people to fall in love with what he does, and particularly what he does on the court, because he does have some special moments. Yeah,
he does, and it's going to take some time because he's so young. I mean, look, man, there's a reason why there was a camera whenever Donovan was at a July 4th party, or at one point, didn't he intervene when there was a car accident, and somehow, some way, there was a camera on this? Like, cultivated is a kind way of putting that, or calculate. It's a kind way of putting that.
He was a perfectly designed, like, PR robot and kudos to him. Like, that would be so hard to pull off for any period of time. How many times does, like, the veneer come off when you're just trying to be nice at a family dinner?
For
right?
sure.
Like, and he was, through all of that, pretty good at staying on message. That's a skill.
Yeah.
And you make a lot of money when you have that skill, and kudos to him for that.
And he's awesome, by the way.
Oh, for sure.
He continues to get better. Like, I honestly wondered if he hit his ceiling here under Quinn. Like, I'll say the second to last year, because the last year was so dysfunctional. It was so clear he didn't want to live here anymore. It was so clear that he wanted out. And I know it's probably tough for Jazz fans to hear. Like, he's trying on defense. He's guarding in a way that he didn't used to. And he is maybe one of the top 5 or 6 ball in hand guys in the NBA now. The undercurrent of the Nico Harrison stuff in Dallas, because everybody's like, you can't trade a generational superstar in their mid-20s, and Donovan's not Luka, but the Jazz did. It was a really calculated risk. But at the same time, I know we've had this conversation before. It did feel like the one avenue that was the right thing to do, but I think I'll always look back on that and wonder if there was another way, because it's so rare that we have somebody like Donovan that young here, and he was just so good, and he continues to get better.
Yeah, I see that, and then I think where it differs from the Luka thing is that Luka wanted to be there.
Yes,
and the Jazz obviously have a player who wants to leave, and you have no path, you have no picks, you're stuck in a lot of ways, and so you contrast not only Luka's star, like he's a level above Donovan, or and then you take that with the haul they got back, which wasn't much, and at least the Donovan trade, and you can look back now and say, this worked out, this didn't work out. We're already seeing that at this point. But at that point, you get, we have a lot of, like, future toys to play with, and some hope.
Yeah.
And so, and the Luka trade gave no hope.
Right. No. I mean, look, it was at the time, and probably will go down as the worst transaction in the history of pro basketball, and that's why he lost his job. As far as a readership interest level, are the Jazz trending up a little bit, or are Jazz fans just kind of like, I don't know, because I kind of debate with myself on this. What you and I do in sports media is contingent upon diehard fans who are going to read the Tribune about their favorite team, or who are going to turn on the radio when they're driving home to see what we're talking about, see if it's of interest of them. And the majority of the fans that go to the Delta Center, because it is the Delta Center, the majority of the fans that go to the Delta Center, I think I've just become resigned to the fact that they're not necessarily basketball fans. They just want a night out. and they just want to go have an experience. Because if they were actual basketball fans or cared about the Jazz being good, they would have tapped out a while ago, and they continue to not.
Absolutely. I think, Jazz fans, at least in terms of where they're going to put their energy and, their hopes, they're Utah football fans or they're BYU football fans. Right? Like that's where they are.
Yeah.
And if, there are a select few people that are probably hardcore Jazz fans that really care, but you're right. They are looking for a night out, which is why, and Andy Larson pointed this out the other day, but like the lower bowl after halftime, coming out of the third quarter, you see how nice the new chairs are because people are eating and they're drinking, they're having a night out,
exactly,
and it doesn't really matter what happens right now.
Yeah.
They spent their money for this experience, and it's more fun for them to go and have another beer and have a chat with somebody versus like I got to be there. I got to see what Nurk's going to do.
See the Filipowski triple-double watch. Right. Yeah. No, you're not wrong. Real quick, before we get over to some college football, before I say you lose, you referenced the sickos out there. And we've been talking quite a bit about college basketball because, I wanted to see Al succeed at Utah and BYU. They're playing UConn in Boston on Saturday night. Like, that's wild. And we've been discussing the lack of interest in some of the local college basketball stuff. And if you expand it back, the last time certainly Utah basketball was relevant was really when Rick was here in the 90s. You could also make a case that was the last time the college basketball was really nationally relevant from a grand stage. It was like the Tarkin UNLV and the great Leitner Hurley Duke teams and Michigan Fab 5, and those tournaments are things that we all watched in a way that not many people do. Were you ever a big college basketball guy? Like even back then, were you dialed in a way that you're not now?
Yes, 1,000%. Yeah. I mean, I loved watching like Pac-10 games, late at night, and watching like Baron Davis and like I loved that. Crystal,
shout out,
will tell you that I still have a disgusting pair of like Foot Locker purchased Arizona Wildcat shorts that everybody had
below the knees.
I mean.
Or
I grew a little bit. I grew a few inches, so they're probably at the knees at this point.
Yeah.
Awful looking. Still have them, but had to get them because I was just watching, the Pac-10.
Sure,
and it was awesome.
Little Miles Simon,
And I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever get back to that place again. I think maybe it's one of those things where it becomes, in a way, kind of like how I view hockey, where your original 6 teams, your East Coast teams, like there are places where that culture exists and may never die. Your Kansas, your Duke, your UNC or whatever, and then everyone else is like, when you're good, then you're part of the conversation again. But I don't know. I mean, I think there are going to be a lot of places that is Stanford basketball going to have, like, are there diehards there? No, they're going to wait until they're have a good team, and then their arena is going to be full, and maybe that's the case at the U right now.
I wonder, because you referenced the hockey team, and let's do a little Tusks Up hashtag before we get to some college basketball, or college football, excuse me. I'm genuinely curious, because I have a lot of friends that are Jazz fans that are just, like, over it. They're disenfranchised. They don't like the direction that was chosen. It's an unserious approach to competition. And then a lot of them simply believe that in the modern day and age of pro basketball, because we have a market that's been injured by our stars. Hayward left us. Darren was traded. Donovan wanted out, right? And so every time we feel like we're making progress, we take 10 steps backwards. Now I'll push back on the narrative that we can't build a championship team here because Oklahoma City is incredible and Victor Wembanyama is terrifying, and Oklahoma City and San Antonio are smaller markets than we are. It takes smart, invested ownership. It takes, calculated decisions by a front office, and honestly, it takes luck. It just does. And the Jazz are going to have that on their side. But so many of my friends that are Jazz fans seem to be latching on to the Mammoth, and they want to go to NHL hockey games. And these are not hockey fans. They just feel like there's a better shot that we're going to have a Stanley Cup here than ever having a Larry O'Brien trophy here, which is hard for me to argue with. You know what I mean? Like, for a number of different scenarios, some culturally and some otherwise, it does feel like the hockey team has a better chance to be relevant before the basketball team does.
I completely agree with that. I mean, I think, one, the former Coyotes, they're just much farther along in their rebuild process. And they did, maybe they are, OKC on ice in a way. They got a bunch of picks, right, and built that up over a number of years, and so they're farther along. Too, I mean, it's a league where apparently, again, I'm new to this, like the amenities and a lot of the way that, and I think this goes beyond even just sort of what the Arizona situation was, but the way that people talk about Ryan Smith and what he's done for the Mammoth shows that like there aren't enough people doing that in the NHL.
For sure.
Whereas as good as I'm sure the Jazz experience is for a lot of those players, it's probably much more comparable to a lot of other NBA teams. I think they've been able to create a gap there. I mean, obviously, just demographically, the NHL is extremely white, which is a thing that you hear a lot in terms of luring free agents to Salt Lake City. And so, there's just a lot of different things that stack up there. And so, yeah, I completely can see a Stanley Cup here before I can see a Larry O'Brien trophy in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, and hockey games are fun. They always have been. I mean, I grew up going to Ranger games in the Garden, and, whether or not I was a hockey expert or knew exactly what I was watching all the time was like, it's just a fun environment.
Yeah, and it's 1,000% better live.
Yes,
I mean, it's,
absolutely
it is. I watched quite a bit last year, and I'm guessing where the puck goes on TV, even on a reasonably large television.
Yes.
You go there, and particularly if you can splurge for what is a pretty spendy seat in the lower bowl, you have clear understanding of what's happening. And you like when I'm listening, I'm like, how could the announcer make this call? I have no idea what's happening. There, you can totally see it. So it is a very cool live experience.
It
no
is.
doubt about it.
Was that a humble brag about the size of your TV? Did I catch that right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, you won't see me waiting in line on Black Friday. I already did it.
Fair enough. I have not been to the new abode. I was invited at one point. It was not the time for that. Maybe at some point.
We'll make time.
Okay. Fair enough. Can I tell you what the deviant side of me is cheering for?
Absolutely.
As you and I discuss all the time, when I get asked hey, who do you cheer for? My answer is the same. Everybody. I want everybody to win. It's better for my business. Or burn it all to the ground. Win big or chaos, it's better for sports media. So where we find ourselves now is a really interesting spot. The one thing BYU could not afford in Lubbock was to get their doors kicked in, and that's what happened. They got smoked. That was the only thing they had to avoid, okay? What the CFP continues to tell us is the metrics they use love Utah, despite 2 losses, right? So there are several pathways, and we're not going to go over all of them right now because you sound like a schizophrenic lunatic when you dig into it on the radio. Ultimately, if they're able to get Cincinnati and BYU to lose one more time, and all 3 of those teams have 2 losses, you go from head-to-head to conference record, strength of opponent. Utah gets in the Big 12 championship game. That's one avenue. What I'm cheering for, and I think there's a chance here, is Utah wins out, and I think they will. BYU wins out, and I honestly think they're going to win out. TCU in Provo could get a little tricky, but BYU and Utah are built a lot alike, right? Can we agree upon that?
Yep.
Utah steamrolls Cincinnati. I think BYU will do the same. I think that's a bad matchup for Cincinnati. You tell me what you think the committee does. If this scenario takes place, BYU goes back to the Big 12 championship game, and they get curb stomped by Tech again, and Utah wins out. Does Utah get in as an at-large, and Texas Tech gets in as the Big 12 champ, and BYU's left out? There's a chance you see that if some of the things go right in front of them right now.
I think that absolutely sounds like a thing the committee would do, because with an asterisk here, because why not? We're gonna avoid the head-to-head, even though you got stomped. Even if BYU gets stomped twice by the same team that they love, that is very good now. Obviously, both in the metrics and what they put on the field, and then you get penalized for that. Absolutely, it's a nonsensical reason for a team to drop behind a team that they've beaten head-to-head. Perfect thing for the committee to do. Here's what's going to happen: Vanderbilt, give me another SEC team.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to I hope that's not the case, and maybe this is the year where the Big 12 gets some love, and these are 3 really good teams, all 3 of them. But man, at what point, why would I have faith in the NCAA and college football decision makers to not do the thing that they have always done?
Yeah, and I always push back on the whole bias towards the Big 12. But the fact of the matter is, anything you look at does indicate the better football is in the Big Ten and the SEC. It just does. The NFL draft picks, right? Talent that goes and plays pro football. The majority of head-to-head matchups when big moments are on. It's why the Arizona State loss to Texas last year, even though it was super close, stung. That would have been a big thing for this conference. Do you think Tech could potentially be the team that the Big 12 has been looking for a number of years that can go to that block party and hang with the other teams from the SEC and the Big Ten?
I think so. I mean, they've spent enough to be that team. They've looked the part against, again, I think BYU and Utah are both really good teams right now. And they have looked so much better than those teams. No, I absolutely think they've got the ability to do that. And, again, I'm not here to side with this hypothetical committee decision.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see.
Yeah.
I'd like, because I think diversifying that playoff is helpful to avoiding the thing we talked about with college basketball, where you only, it only matters or it only matters more, at least in certain places, and you eventually lose casual fans, or you lose these markets in a way. Like embrace the weirdness and kind of the wide tapestry of the landscape, and get these teams in from time to time. Don't just cater to like your NFL juniors. Like I would love to see a little bit of variety there.
Yeah, and the altruistic side of me agrees with the sentiment, but I think the logical side of the argument you brought up before is probably what we're going to see, unless there's something that just leaves no doubt. Like, you need Notre Dame to lose to Pitt this weekend. I don't think they're going to, because they close out with two cakewalks. I think it's Syracuse, horrible football program, and journalism school that Notre Dame is going to walk all over. So Texas has A&M to close out, but they've got Georgia this weekend at Georgia's place between the hedges. So, and Oklahoma is in Tuscaloosa. So I do think you're going to get help from Texas and Oklahoma. I don't know that you'll get help with Notre Dame. And in that scenario, you can see a Utah climbing up into the top 10 potentially. But I do think I'm going to say the same thing about Utah as I said about BYU last week in a different way. What Utah can't go down to Waco and do is win 10-7. Like, you've got to cover. Like, the line, I think, is 7.5, down from 9.5, but I don't think even that's enough. I think you need to do to Baylor what you did to Cincinnati and Colorado, even though it's a road game. Utah's only pathway in is to completely impress with 3 dominant wins over teams that they should beat down the stretch.
And I think they have a chance. Like, this game is the one game, that looks difficult on the rest of Utah's schedule for whatever reason. It's a road game, if nothing else, right? But it's a matchup that I think suits them. They can blitz. I mean, they got a quarterback that's going to try to throw, and maybe you don't have to worry about the legs as much. Like, this is a good matchup for them in that regard. I think they've got a chance to do it, and I think they should. I think they should run the table the rest of the way. Yeah,
I think both teams are going to. Who's winning your fantasy football league? Is Bench hanging? Is he doing all right?
I have taken an insurmountable lead over Nate Bench.
Really?
I beat him last week for my first win of the year. He is now 1-9. I'm 2-8 after beating Kamrani this weekend.
You're 2-8.
Here's my.
Oh wait, he's 2-8.
Chris is like 5-5.
Okay.
Here's my confession. I don't watch the NFL at all. I watch so much on Saturday. That if I try to watch the NFL on Sunday, then I'm gonna get divorced. Like I'm gonna be on the streets.
Did you guys elope?
No.
I was gonna say, did I miss something? I wasn't gone that long.
No. But I will be without, and so
sure. And you want to hang on to this one?
I do.
She's a keeper.
I do.
Shout out Crystal.
Yes. So I'm not watching. I don't know. Like, I draft the beginning, and then I watch. I turned on for a second because she was gone on Sunday, and I'm like, oh, this is what Travion Henderson is. But, like, in the NFL, you know what I mean? I don't watch, so I stink. I won the league like 3 times once upon a time.
Okay.
And then I moved into this role, and I have been the last place team for 5 straight years.
You know what this is, Aaron? This is growth, is what this is. There's no part of you at your age with a stable relationship with a wonderful young lady who needs to be waking up, getting ready for Red Zone, smashing 6 hours of NFL television. You don't need to be doing that. This is growth, is what that is.
I got to learn about the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Well played. Bring it back around. You want to go see Rod Stewart?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good to see you, buddy.
You too.
Aaron Falk, sports editor, Salt Lake Tribune. Rod Stewart with special guest Richard Marks is taking over the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. So if you are a 58-year-old single female on Friday, June 19th, text 877-353-0700 to win tickets to see Rod Stewart with Richard Marks at the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater. We'll catch a break. Final hour of the show on Wednesdays next on ESPN 700. 5 o'clock hour of the program, Wednesday afternoon style, gets rolling right about now. Hello. Happy commute home to you on this Wednesday afternoon. Your commute home starts right now. And you are halfway through that work week. You're one day closer to the weekend. Happy Wednesday to you. Thank you for making us a part of your day today and every day here on The Drive with Spence Checketts on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. Busy show today. Good guest list. A couple of guys in studio, a couple of good friends in studio. Gordon Monson, Salt Lake Tribune, rolled by a little bit earlier. Zach Harper, NBA Daily Assist style. The Utah Jazz got a win last night over the Pacers, who just, man, they look really, really bad after winning the East a year ago. And then Aaron Falk, sports editor of the Salt Lake Tribune, was our guest in studio last segment. Of course, a lot of college football on the program today as we were, well, I would say as we were actually starting the 5 o'clock hour yesterday. The college football playoff rankings were released. Not a ton of surprises. The CFP committee did kind of send a shot across the bow of the ACC. There's a small chance the ACC gets completely shut out of the college football playoff bracket altogether. Now, a lot of things would have to fall into play. Miami is the highest ranked ACC team. A lot of people thought they were a little undervalued. They jumped up 3 spots to number 15. But there's a chance that the ACC actually gets shut out. But what did they tell us about the Big 12 yesterday? BYU dropping 5 spots like we thought they might. Utah, despite being idle, jumping up 2 spots. The one potential possibility, we talked about this with Riles yesterday, was after Vandy beating Auburn, would they jump past Utah? Because Vandy has 2 losses, so does Utah. Most of the metrics tell us that Utah is potentially the best 2-loss team in the country. Now, the 2-loss teams in front of them all have big-time challenges coming up this weekend. So if you are a Utah fan, you have to cheer for TCU to beat BYU. The good news is if you're a Utah fan, you no longer need to cheer for BYU. If that's something that made you feel uncomfortable, as we discussed, as it pertains to what you needed to have happen, it would have been better for you if actually BYU beat TCU. Or excuse me, if BYU beat Texas Tech, but they didn't. BYU goes to Lubbock and they get their brakes blown off. It's the one thing BYU had to avoid. So as a Ute fan, you no longer have to rise and shout. I know it made a lot of you uncomfortable anyway. So now you need to cheer for BYU to lose one more game. Now, in my opinion, I do not see that happening. The best potential possibility could be Saturday night in Provo, even though the game is at Lavelle, and even though it is at night where BYU is really difficult. I just simply believe BYU will handle their business in when it comes to the game against Cincinnati in a way that Utah handled Cincinnati. BYU and Utah are built kind of in the same vein, in the same way. They want to play the same way with physical defenses. Fast and physical defenses. They want to stop the run and get after the quarterback, and they want to run the football. PFF's grade for Cincinnati and their defensive front is the worst against the run. We saw what Utah did against Cincinnati. I anticipate BYU being able to do the same thing. So the best chance for BYU to get got might be Saturday night against TCU. TCU is one of these teams that feels like outside of the top 3, you can make a case that besides Texas Tech, besides BYU, besides Utah, TCU might be the 4th best team in this conference. Now, they have been up and down. Their losses, for the most part, have been games that just got away from them when they were in scenarios where they should have won. They were beating Arizona State on the road by 17. They essentially limited Iowa State to a very anemic offensive performance, but Iowa State was able to return a kick for a touchdown in the 4th quarter and ultimately get that game and get that win just the last time TCU played, 2017. So TCU is really a baby's breath soccer term away from being an 8-win football team, away from being 8-1 and 5-1 in conference play. So from a Utah perspective, and BYU is a 4.5-point favorite, even though that game is at home. Vegas builds in 3. What does that mean? Vegas is telling us if Brigham Young and TCU are playing on a neutral field Saturday night, this would virtually be a pick'em. BYU would be a slight favorite, and that's it. So, again, from a Utah perspective, from a Utah standpoint, you've got to hope BYU gets got. Now, the other scenario that we've unpacked is the at-large potential, and that would kind of look like this. Both Utah and BYU win out. BYU goes back to the Big 12 championship game, or I should say BYU goes to the Big 12 championship game back against Texas Tech for another rematch, another matchup. And if Texas Tech stomps them again and Utah handles their business, does the committee value Utah over BYU, even though BYU's 2 losses would be to a Texas Tech team that most people believe is potentially a top 5 team in the country? Part of me wonders if Texas Tech is actually getting the raw end of the deal here. Should they be ranked higher? Should they be in the mix for a first-round bye if you're one of the top 4 teams? So a couple of different avenues, okay? One avenue is BYU and Cincinnati both losing one more game. If that happens, we're in a 3-way tie with 2 losses to go to Arlington, and you go away from head-to-head in that scenario when there are multiple 2-loss teams, and then you analyze conference record strength and percentage of win percentage against conference opponents. Utah should be in that way if it goes down, if both Cincinnati and BYU have 2 losses. So you got to cheer for TCU coming up this Saturday night. And then you've got to hope that somehow, some way, Pitt is able to beat Notre Dame. I don't think that's going to happen. Pitt is the home team. College game day will be there. So if you're a Ute fan, you want to cheer for Pitt. If you're a Ute fan, you want to cheer for Georgia. Texas finds themselves on the road at Georgia where they are a 6-point dog. If you're a Ute fan, you want to cheer for Alabama, as Georgia finds themselves in Tuscaloosa also as an underdog. So these are the teams in front of Utah in the CFP rankings that you want to essentially got so you have a better chance of getting in the dance. Now, the other question we've asked today, and we're going to talk about it coming up with CK, what does a 10-2 season mean for Utah football if you don't play for a conference championship, if you don't make it into the college football playoff? What does 10-2 mean? It's a really good year. There's no other way to spin that. But no banner being hung, right? And we know that if this potentially is the last dance for Witt, that's probably something that he would like to have a chance to do, whether it's in the Big 12 or in the college football playoff. But I'll repeat what I've been saying all week long, and I'll probably going to be saying it for the next couple of weeks as well. If you are a college football fan and you make it to mid-November with something to cheer for, like legitimately tangible hope for your team in mid-November, you're winning. It's pretty rare, man. And we should all remember that when it comes to the quality of the college football we have here in the state of Utah. All right, before we catch a break, I want to tell you about my friends at Outlaw Distillery. Outlaw Distillery is the official spirits provider of our VIP ESPN 700 tailgate at each home game this season. Only one more left. It's hard to believe. K-State coming up in a couple of weeks. Outlaw Distillery, they have amazing drinks like their honey bourbon, vodka, spiced rum, and coffee rum. They just came out with a new barrel-proof bourbon, which is sitting at 133 proof. That is aggressive. It's spicy, bold, and very smooth. Bottles left, so get yours today. Great with an old-fashioned or mixed drinks. You can get a taste at our VIP tailgate this season or go check out every one of their options at Big Willie Sports Bar, another fantastic partner of ESPN 700. All right, we have the Alex Jensen Coaches Show for you coming up on the other side. So to clarify, I was talking about this earlier, the ACC with a small chance of potentially being shut out. So the ACC gets an automatic bid to the 12-team college football playoff if its champion is among the 5 highest-ranked conference champions selected by the committee. There's a very small chance that that's not the case. So ultimately, 5 automatic bids. The 5 highest-ranked conference champions receive automatic bids regardless of which conference they are from. Miami, the highest-ranked ACC team as of right now, ultimately has a chance to make it in as a at-large team. A lot of people thought Miami was undervalued a week ago. That was fixed today. Virginia and Louisville lost, so it was a bad Week 11 for the ACC. And we'll have to see what happens when it comes to multiple bids for the Big 12. So it's a small chance, but I'm quite sure there is a chance that the ACC could be completely left out. So Virginia 14, Louisville 15, kind of the league's 2 torchbearers in the first CFP rankings, lost, of course, to Wake Forest and Cal, respectively. So Georgia Tech was on a bye. First loss of the season, NC State. Miami beat Syracuse easily. So ultimately, Duke, this 5-4 team, has a chance to qualify for the ACC championship. And, I just have to wonder how that would work. 5 automatic qualifiers, 12-team bracket, 5 highest-ranked conference champions based on the selection committee's final top 25. So if there's a group of 5 team or multiple teams slotted higher than the ACC's champ at season end, I'm quite sure the other teams would get in along with the champions of the SEC, Big 10, and the Big 12. So again, it's not likely, but I do believe, if I'm understanding this correctly, there's a small chance that the ACC gets left out altogether. Small chance. Not big chance, small chance. Of course, their banner-waving teams this year, the typical teams that are good out of that conference, the Clemsons and the Florida States, have been very disappointing. So we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. But I'm quite sure there's a small chance that the ACC could be left out altogether. We'll have to see. All right, Alex Jensen Coaches Show coming up on the other side of a quick break. Busy show today. A lot going on. If you missed any of it, you guys know where to find it by now. Utah Mammoth are back at it tonight. They are taking on the Buffalo Sabres, the former home of J.J. Peterka, of course, now playing for the Mammoth. Bradley Beal's going to have season-ending surgery on his hip, so bad news if you're a Clipper fan. The Jazz will be back in action tomorrow when it comes to the Atlanta Hawks in town. Porter, what comes our way on a Thursday show?
On a Thursday edition of The Drive, college football conversation continues. Bill Bush, former coach, Kyle Bonagura of ESPN. We'll chat with our guy Sam Bruckhouse of Sumer Sports, and then head over to the NBA Daily Assist with our friend Howard Beck.
All right, there you go. Join us for a Thursday show. Special thank you today, CK, Gordon Monson, Zach Harper, Aaron Falk. Check out the website, ESPN700sports.com. Download our app, and then check out our podcast page and support it. Have a great Wednesday evening. Enjoy the Alex Jensen Coaches Show. Coming up on the other side, we'll talk to you on a Thursday drive right here on ESPN 700.